What's up? Let me go ahead and drop some game on you. I'm giving away a 2-hour and 25-minute free course. This was originally paid. I'm giving it to you for free. This is everything you need if you're a beginner freelancer or if you haven't started freelancing yet. How to actually charge, freelancing basics, skills for freelancing, what tools you're gonna need should you work for free, how to turn the free work into paid work, and how to price your services, and just honestly so much other stuff, how to build a consistent clientele. Let's go ahead and start it. This is a 2-hour and 25-minute free course. This is literally everything you need if you're not freelancing yet or if you're making peanuts. Enjoy. Let's start. What's up, people? Welcome to another program here in Video Production Plus. This is the Freelance Video Production Crash Course. If you're day one as a freelancer, you've had no projects, this is going to provide immense value to you. Even if you're already in the game with a few projects underneath your belt, you're working with clients, this is also going to provide value to you as well. We're going to approach this from a very unique perspective. I brought my good friend Ryaz in. We came up in London, the London videography scene together. I have a slightly different approach. He has a slightly different approach. In today's course, we've taken all of that information, all of those lessons he learned, the lessons I learned too, and put it into one course with one specific goal: to give you the best head start you could possibly have in your new freelance career. A couple of the things we're going to be talking about in today's course are going to be ranging from what is freelancing, assessing your skills, what you actually need to freelance, building a portfolio, should you work for free, pricing your services. A lot of you guys need help and a framework for that. We're going to touch on it. Getting your first paid job, creating a sustainable income you can rely on, and building and maintaining a healthy client base over years. Not today, you got a couple clients, tomorrow you don't. We are ultimately trying to set you guys up with a freelance career, something that's ongoing, that you're getting paid from, and ideally would replace a traditional job. Without further ado, I'm going to bring Ryaz in to introduce himself, and then we're going to get cracking with the Freelance Video Production Crash Course.
Hi there, I'm Riaz. Jack's giving you a bit of an insight into what you can expect from this course. I just want to give you guys a bit of a background into who I am and my experience so far in the freelancing space. My video production journey began when I was at school. I just picked up a camera and started filming videos for the aspiring musicians and rappers that I knew in my area. Whilst I was doing this, I started teaching myself editing skills using software like iMovie, Windows Movie Maker to put together my first little films and put them out there on YouTube for the world to see. I then decided to go to film school in London, where I did a 3-year course in film production. Whilst I was studying at film school, I noticed there was a distinct lack of knowledge and advice on freelancing. So I decided to start learning myself how I could become a freelancer, and additionally doing freelance projects alongside my film degree so that I could make myself some extra money to fund my passion for filmmaking. Whilst I was at university, I started to freelance as a video editor, working remotely, editing courses and promotional content for various clients. I also started to work on fashion content for magazines such as Wonderland Magazine and Hunger Magazine, as well as fashion clients such as La Perla, Gilder & Pearl, and Amy Lynn. I also started to work freelance in the music space, working on music videos and music promos for various clients, including Johnny Marr, Bugsy Malone, and Frank Carter and the Rattlesnakes, where I would create promotional content as well as go on their tours and shoot videos and concert films for these artists. As an editor, I've worked with clients such as Channel 4, which is a big UK broadcast channel, on their social media content, providing content for them for all of their different social media pages. Whilst I was at film school, can you guess how many modules they actually had on freelancing? The answer is 0. And the reason we're making this course is because these are the lessons distilled down that I wish I'd known when I started my freelance journey, so that I wouldn't have had to learn all the painful mistakes and put hours in to learn these hard lessons. We want to give that to you in a nice complete package, so that when you start your freelance journey, you're starting in a great place and you've got all the opportunity in the world to make a successful freelance career. With that being said, I'm Riaz. Let's jump straight into the filmmaking crash course and get you started on your freelancing career today. So in this module, we're going to cover what are the actual basics of freelancing and what does freelancing even mean. Now, in the traditional job landscape, what you might be familiar with is you have a full-time or a part-time job with an employer and a manager type structure, where you get given daily tasks and responsibilities, you show up at a certain time, you clock out at a certain time, and regardless, you'll get paid a fixed salary. Freelancing is different from this traditional model, as what you're doing is you're going out there, you're finding and securing your own clients, you're agreeing to deliver those clients a service, and you're charging for that service. What are the pros and cons of freelancing? Freelancing means that you're responsible for going out there, finding your own work, negotiating your fees and what you're going to provide the client for that fee, and then making sure that you receive that payment and you actually deliver what you've promised to deliver. One of the advantages of this model is that you're not working in a traditional 9 to 5 type structure. You're able to manage your time and manage your resources so that you can create your own schedule and make sure you're always delivering what you've agreed to deliver. If you can work out, okay, I can get 6 hours of work done and I can get this project done in that time and I can deliver it, then you know that you can just schedule in that time and crack on. That might give you the freedom to then go to the gym or go meet up with friends or whatever you want to do. As long as you're keeping on top of your time management and putting the time in to freelancing, it's kind of up to you. You're your own boss and you get to manage your own projects. So what are the advantages of being a freelancer? Now, the advantages of being a freelancer are that you can manage your own workload. You can choose to take on as much or as little work as you want, and you can negotiate your fees for that work, and you can potentially work as hard or as little as you want to. You could say, this month I want to work really hard. I want to work with 3-4 different clients, and I want to be working every day 8 to 10 hours, and you could potentially earn a lot of money doing that. Alternatively, you might find it really difficult to get clients, and you might not actually find a lot of work, and you might not be making a lot of money in a given period, as you're struggling to actually land clients. This is different from the comfort and security of a regular full-time or part-time job, where regardless of how much you're working or you're doing, you've kind of got a guaranteed salary that you're going to receive. Another advantage of freelancing is that you have the time and location freedom. As long as you can schedule in enough time and make sure you're delivering what you promised to your clients, it's up to you when you work and how you're going to get that done. It's completely up to you. You may know I've got to get this project delivered by Friday and I'm going to schedule these hours and I'm going to make sure I get it done. Then I'm going to take the afternoons off, chill out with my family, go see some friends, whatever it is you might want to do. In a traditional job, regardless, you have to show up 9 to 5 every day, regardless of the workload, and that's a fixed. It's not a negotiable. Also, for a regular job, you're often required to show up to an office or a place of work and be there every day, show your face, and actually be present at the workplace. With freelance, it can vary. You might be able to edit a bunch of projects from a cafe down the road, from your home office, from a rented workspace. You may also have to show up to jobs to film, but then you can go home and edit and take your time and have that freedom of where you actually want to get the work done. So you have that location freedom, you have that time freedom, and you're essentially your own boss, but you are responsible to your clients. If you make a promise to a client, you have to deliver on that promise, as opposed to being responsible to a traditional manager or a traditional employer. You still have responsibilities and you still are accountable, but this time it's to your clients rather than a traditional manager or employer. Throughout this course, we're going to get a bit more in depth about the advantages and disadvantages of being a freelancer, some of the problems that you may face along the way, and how you can potentially overcome these obstacles. The main purpose of this course is to give you an insight into what it is like being a freelancer, and if it's something that interests you, how you can actually get your start with getting paid work as a freelancer. If you've ever been interested in having your own freelance work or getting into the freelance space, this is the right course for you. I'm going to now talk to you a little bit briefly about my own personal journey into freelancing. My freelancing journey began when I was at school. I just wanted to learn how to edit. So I'd pull videos and clips from YouTube and just make different compilation videos. I used to make them for some MMA fighters and some musicians that I liked, just as like a little fan piece to put out there online and get into kind of content creation. Fast forward a couple years, and some of the kids at my school had noticed that I was making videos on YouTube, and they asked me if I'd potentially be interested in making them a music video. I said yes without having the first idea of how to even make a music video. I spent some time researching, and I just showed up with my camera, shot a music video for them, and delivered a music video for them to put on their YouTube channel. Now, I think at this time I was probably charging something like $50 for my very first video, but that gave me a taste of what freelance work was like. I was showing up somewhere with my camera and creating something and charging a fee for that. Now, whilst it wasn't a very high fee at that time, I was getting that experience of what it was like working with someone to create something and deliver something for them for a fee. Once I'd made my first music video, word spread around the school, and a few of the other kids who were also budding rappers or musicians asked me if I'd be interested in making a music video for them. So I took the same approach, and I would show up with my camera. Sometimes my brother would come and help me out, and we'd just make a video, charge them maybe $50 for a video, go shoot the video and send them the edit. I then made the personal choice to study film in a formal capacity at film school in London. And that was because I wanted to get a better understanding of how the industry operates, what the different practices are that you need to know in a traditional filmmaking landscape. However, whilst I was doing that, I wanted to make some extra money to fund my filmmaking and invest in myself as a filmmaker. So I started to freelance as a video editor and also as a behind the scenes videographer. So what I'd do is I'd contact graduates from my university who might potentially be working on fashion projects or music projects. I'd show up with my camera and I'd just film a bunch of behind the scenes content, document exactly what they were doing, create a little edit for that and send it to them so they could use it on their YouTube or their portfolio just to kind of showcase what they'd been working on. That was my first taste of doing freelance videography jobs whilst I was at university. And at the same time, I was also doing some freelance editing work where I'd take content from different online coaches, package together courses for them, edit those courses and send it off to them so they could put it on their online membership platforms. Today, I'm still working as a freelancer and I mainly work with a handful of clients on one of two things. I either show up and I film a project, I edit a project and I deliver a project for a fixed fee that I've agreed upon beforehand, or I receive footage and content from a client, which I edit, I send to them, and then I receive a fee for that. So my two main forms of income as a freelancer are videography jobs and video editing jobs. Just to give you guys a bit of a flavor of what a life in freelancing can look like, I've done a bunch of different projects with a bunch of different clients. Some of them have included going on tour with different musicians to create concert films for them, working with different fashion brands to create promo videos for their social media and website pages, and doing countless remote video editing jobs, taking footage, crafting it, and sending it back to the client.
Perfect. So now let's have a look briefly into my freelance story. So a lot of you guys know me. I'm going to go ahead and assume all of you know me if you're watching this in my private community and you've paid to get it to my community, which means you must be loosely familiar with the backstory that I have, but I'll go over it again. I came up really from a perspective of passion. I loved creating videos. I would create gaming videos on the internet. A lot of you guys might know I had a semi bit of notoriety built up on the internet as a gamer when I was young. I eventually got bored of sitting in the house and playing video games, and I went out and I started a production company. I gathered up my boys and we started filming music videos around our local town. We would film freestyles for rappers. We would film full production music videos that translated into promo videos for businesses, and other people started to pay attention around town. Now, in line with the videography stuff that I was doing in real life, again, this isn't some, flashy set. This wasn't some multi-million-dollar thing. I started filming on my boy's camera. My boy Noah's Canon 600D. Go ahead and stop the course and Google that if you want to have a laugh, because this camera was absolutely nothing special. And I want to reinforce that because a lot of you guys won't be starting with the best computer in the world to edit on, the best camera in the world to shoot on. I didn't. Briaz didn't. That didn't stop us. And the reality of the situation is the freelance game, I've said it ad nauseum at this point, but let me say it again, it gets greater later. AKA, the more you do up front, the more of a track record you can establish for yourself, the greater it gets down the road, and the easier it begins to sell your services when you can command a respectable price because of the factors that we're going to talk about today. Building a portfolio, establishing a track record, getting started and getting the hump out the way, right? And, getting to this later and getting to the greater later point. It's natural progression, and it will naturally happen if you guys stay consistent with the things we're going to talk about today. If you've never touched a freelance project before, this course will provide value to you. If you've touched a few, this course will provide value to you. And even if you're a full-time freelancer in the game, I'm sure you will actually extrapolate some points from this course that will provide value to you as well. And I'm excited to share with you. So action steps. Identify what you want to get out of freelancing. When I started freelancing, it was very clear. I wanted to build a full-time income so I didn't have to go work for somebody else. I actually think freelancing is the perfect starter for any entrepreneur, even if you don't want to be a freelancer for your entire life. And I'm not a freelancer currently in the active sense. I run an agency and I actually bring the deal flow in through my track record and through the personal brand that I've built up. And we push that off to our freelancers below. It's an agency setup. But regardless, freelancing is a perfect entry into the online marketplace of making money on the internet, even if you don't want to stay as a freelancer forever. What freelancing enables you to do is two huge things. They were massively important to me, and I'm sure they're important to you too. That's location freedom and time freedom. If you're freelancing, all of a sudden, yes, you have a client to deliver a video for, but you do it at your house, or you go to the coffee shop, or hell, you might go on vacation with the fam and you can still do it poolside. If you wanted to, if the budget permitted, it's possible. The point is, you make your schedule. You don't have one set boss to report to. You still have responsibilities. You need to get the video in on time. And to a certain extent, you have a bunch of mini bosses. You're never at the mercy of one person. AKA, if you work a job, you better keep your boss happy. You better turn up on time. And if that one individual does not like you or you have some level of conflict, it makes your entire working life harder. You will semi-encounter that. You might get a tough client. You might get 2. You might get 3. But ultimately, it's your decision whether you want to keep working with them, and you ultimately hold the power to decide, I'm going to let this client go. I'm going to focus on the ones that are actually treating me better. That's something that is absolutely unique to self-employed work. It's absolutely unique to freelancing, and it is one of the undeniable benefits to choosing a self-employed freelancing career, opposed to deciding that, you know what, I'm going to go work a job for somebody, or even that you're going to go work at a production company, which is still more akin to a traditional working relationship with a boss and a manager, and the traditional corporate structure that a lot of people choose freelancing for to escape. So understand that you are setting yourself up to a more favorable life. Now, what else are you taking on pressure-wise? You are your own boss, which means no one's guaranteeing a check. If there's no money on the table today, there's no one to point your finger at. It's genuinely you. You didn't hustle. You didn't send enough messages. You didn't put out enough content. Ultimately, we could go around and around in circles, but it always leads back to you. So there's a lot of responsibility to be a freelancer. It's something that massively benefits some and it doesn't benefit others. When we talk about action steps and we think about, identifying if freelancing is even something for you, you need to analyze your personality and think, am I a go-getter? Am I a self-motivated individual who's going to sit here and, take on all the responsibility and actually the pressure and the stress of having to be responsible for every dollar that comes through the door, every pound that comes through the door, every euro that comes into your account? It can be a lot of stress. I've certainly had some tricky times on my come up, and I'm sure every freelancer can relate. But regardless, this course and this community in general is designed to fast track that for you. So essentially, you're not figuring it all out by yourself. You've got some people alongside. And certainly, after watching this course, you're going to have a much better framework for how to succeed.
In this module, we're going to be talking a bit about what skills you actually need to freelance. The best way of looking at freelancing is that you're providing your skills as a service to someone who has a demand for them. For example, if a fashion client comes to me and they want to show off the collection they're releasing for the spring and summer, they'll say to me, how can we create a video that's going to showcase these 20 different looks in under a minute? And then I will provide a service of filming the content. I'll film all 20 looks and I'll edit all 20 looks together, and I'll provide them a piece of content which they can then put on their social media, which may potentially convert to sales for their business. This is the fundamental business of freelancing. What service are you providing and who has a demand for that service? For me, the easiest route into freelancing just happened to be video editing. And the reason for that is because in my spare time, just for fun, while I was at school, I started editing my own videos. I started making my own compilations, making my own YouTube videos, and that was just for fun, purely for fun. I didn't expect to make any money from it. But along the way, I actually learned the skill of editing. A few years down the line, my cousin was running a business and they were filming a bunch of courses and content that they wanted to upload on a platform. They didn't have any editing skills and they didn't know anyone who was an editor. My cousin reached out to me and he said, hey, I know you've been editing a few videos for YouTube. Would you be interested in perhaps editing a course for this platform, and we'll pay you to do that service? This is when I first got my insight into what freelancing really was. Now, on the face of it, editing a course is maybe not the sexiest or funnest job out there, but I had a skill, and that was editing content, taking footage, cutting it up, making it succinct, making it catchy, making it engaging, and then sending that back to the client so they could then package it as a course and sell it. So I was providing a service to these online coaches or online influencers, whatever you want to call them, who were teaching content to their audience, but they didn't have anyone to edit that content. And that was where I filled the gap. And I was able to charge for that because they needed that skill. Another skill that I also developed at the same time was going out with my camera and actually filming stuff and editing that content. And because I had the skill of being able to pick up a camera, shoot some angles, write a shot list, and hit all these different specifics for a project, when a company came to me like a fashion brand or a musician and they wanted to put a piece of promo content out, I was able to go, I can do that. I can show it with my camera. I can get these different shots. Because I'm an editor, I know how I can put that together. I can then provide you with a piece of promo content, which will then help you convert to sales for tickets of your show, convert to sales of your collection of your clothes, whatever it is that that business was offering, because I'm showcasing what they're offering in a nice, edited, very engaging way. They had a demand for that. So essentially what we're getting at here is, in the freelance game, the only way you can make money is if you have a skill that you're developing to a point which you can offer it to someone and they actually have a need for that skill. And we just touched on video editing there, and also videography or just general cinematography as well. But there's a bunch of different skills. People need sound recorders, people to record their sound, people to design their sound. People need makeup artists. People need a bunch of different things in the video creation space. I'm not going to list them here because we'd be here all day, but there's a ton of skills out there that people are willing to pay for. Now, what we want you to do is really think about what skills do you currently have? Is there something you've been doing in your spare time just for fun? Is there something that other people have told you, hey, Rios, Jack, you're really good at this. How are you so good at this? Is it something that you could do for me? Because I really need someone. I'm really looking for someone to edit my content. Think about what skills maybe your friends have told you that you have a natural talent for. And above and beyond natural talent, think about what you've been putting the most time in. Do you sit there every night and you write for an hour? Do you edit videos just for fun? Do you love walking out with your camera and just taking photos of your friends? This is what you're going to build the foundation of your freelance business on. The skill that you're already interested in and you're already spending a bit of time developing. Now, we're not asking you to be experts. We're not asking you to be at the highest level yet. What we're asking you to do is think about the thing you're actually interested in and the thing you're currently putting time into. Maybe you spend an hour just writing. Maybe you're creating your own little video edits for YouTube. Maybe you're doing really good illustration, or you're really focused on sound recording. Whatever those skills are, we're not asking you to be at the expert level or the mastery level. We're just asking you to think about what you're interested in and what you're already starting to accumulate some time developing. This is going to form the foundation of your freelance service, because we're going to take what it is you're currently interested in, what it is you're currently putting time into, and teach you how you can actually package that into a service that you can sell to a client. So for this module, we just want you to start thinking about, what am I actually interested in? What am I putting my time into that I could potentially offer as a service? Start by writing down the current skills you have. For me, if I was to do this exercise, it would be, I have a skill in video editing. I can color grade. I can film. I can set up microphones. I can do basic lighting setups. I'm just going to get every single thing that I had, even the smallest amount of skill, on the paper, just so I'm aware of the different areas I've got as potential avenues for freelancing. Once you've done that, I want you to just think about, how confident are you in each of those areas? Which one have you put the most time in? And just write a little number next to them. Rank them from 1 to whatever number you have. This is my strongest. This is my weakest. And this is what's going to form the basis of us thinking about how we can actually package our skills into a freelance service.
Perfect. So assessing skills seems like a, lesson you'd skip, right? Of course, I know my skills, blah, blah, blah. But I'm going to break down what assessing skills look like for me. I had video editing skills that I could sell on the internet. That's the most basic level of assessing my skills. It was obvious. You might have video editing skills as well. You're aware you have them. You don't even need to necessarily write those down or figure them out. It's the outlier skills that you might not even know you're sitting on, which could be the unique selling point for you in the value. Let me relate that to my videography career. I shot over 50 videography projects, about 35 music videos, and like 15, 20 clubs before I even owned a camera. The way I was able to do that comes back to assessing my skills. I had fantastic skills as a self-motivated, go-getter, young kid with a bunch of energy who was willing to sit there and spam off a bunch of emails. My boy Noah didn't necessarily have that, but he had video production skills. He knew how to use the camera. My come up as a videographer, before I even bought my own camera, a Sony a6300, which by the way is a pretty entry-level camera in itself, but before I even owned that camera, I'd already filmed over 50 projects. So the way I did that was going back to assessing my skills. I had business-minded skills to sit here all day long and send off emails until I got us a gig. Noah, on the other hand, had video production skills. He knew the basics of the camera. He knew stuff about lenses. He knew ISO. He knew aperture. And he knew the entry-level stuff that was going to be the preliminary knowledge that I would absorb simply by working alongside him. The power of being in a community like Video Production Plus might not even be the course you take right here. It actually might be the network of individuals that you could potentially partner up with, which might make up for some of your shortcomings. I didn't know how to use a camera. I'll flat out say, I still barely know how to use a camera to this day. And I have a successful videography career. The reason I have a successful videography career, while being able to also simultaneously tell you that I don't even know much about cameras, which doesn't intuitively make sense. It's literally a industry based around cameras. Well, the reason that I was able to coast and have a successful video production career was because I was assessing my skills, and my skills ultimately were my skills for business. The predominant reason why I was successful, if I had to attribute it to one thing, the reason why I was successful in the creative industry is much more predicated on my business acumen and my business savvy and just my stamina to sit here and approach clients at scale
that played a massive role, and that's something you'd write down as well. Are you comfortable crafting cold emails? Do you like getting in front of people? Hell, do you like taking calls with clients, conversing with them? That in itself is also a skill just in line with video editing that you can sell on Upwork, that you can sell on the internet, videography that you can sell to local businesses in your area, rappers, etc. All of those are skills that will contribute to your success in the freelance game. And oftentimes, if you do have a shortcoming, you might be looking to get a partner that actually makes up for and compensates for the skills you might be falling a little bit short in. I was certainly falling short in some of them. It didn't hold me back. It wasn't a roadblock. It wasn't an ultimate roadblock, at least. And I got through and built a successful career, ultimately because I was able to accurately assess my skills. So action steps. I want you to get a piece of paper out right now and write down all of the skills you have. For me, this would be video editing. It would be speaking. I'm a decently good communicator. And it would be the business mindedness and the stamina to sit down and send off emails and the, online business savviness. Again, you don't even have to write these things down in an official manner. Just write down and get an idea of your skills. Another idea to do in unison is also write down the areas that you feel as though, you know what, these are areas I might need to upskill in or improve in, or these might be shortcomings as well. You can have a tiered list where you rank the skills. You can have two different lists, things you're good at, things you're bad at. This is going to give you an idea of the foundation where you are right now and what you might need to capitalize on and we push you more in, or things that you might be falling short in that you either need to partner up with somebody else or upskill to essentially make up for those shortcomings. But regardless, the action steps are write down your skills, write down the things you might be falling short in, and all of that will be the foundation for everything else we're going to talk about in the rest of this course.
So we've spoken a bit about what freelancing actually is, and we've gotten you to think about what it is that you want to actually get out of freelancing. We've then taken you through the skills assessment, and we've asked you to actually think about what tangible skills do you have and what perhaps weaknesses do you have that you want to work on. Now, what we're going to be talking about is what do you actually need to provide your service as a freelancer? And when I say what do you need, this is in terms of the actual tools that are going to be required to get the job done. So when I first started editing, I bought myself a super cheap Mac Mini. It was the cheapest Mac on the market at the time. And it was just going to get me on the ladder of having my own little Mac that I could get started. Now, when I bought this Mac, I had a look around what was already on the computer, and I just happened to have iMovie already on there. Now, if you're a Mac user, you're going to be familiar with iMovie, and it will more than likely already be pre-installed on your Mac. iMovie is a free software that allows you to edit, and it's a very basic program, but you can edit videos in iMovie. I knew I wanted to edit videos. I didn't have any money to spend on software, and I knew that I could just use iMovie to get by. I could essentially bring footage in, cut footage up, and export footage. And if you're a video editor, that's all you really need to be able to do. You need to be able to bring footage in, you need to be able to cut it up, and you need to be able to export that footage. So after I did this in iMovie, I started editing a bunch of different videos just for my own personal projects, and I kind of started finding the software limited. So I started doing my own research. What is the video editing software most popular out there? What are people in the industry using? What should I be working towards using as an editing software that will give me the freedom to actually edit in the way I want to edit, give me a bit more than the basic tools on offer in iMovie? So from there, once I'd kind of exhausted what I could get done in iMovie, an equivalent to iMovie would be Windows Movie Maker, I decided to look into the next piece of software, and that happened to be, for me, Adobe Premiere Pro, because it was part of the Adobe package and it would offer a wider set of tools that I could use to get videos edited. So I started looking into how I could get my hands on Adobe Premiere Pro without necessarily breaking the bank, because at the time, this was before Adobe Creative Cloud and all that kind of plan model. I had to spend an outright fee to get it. I found some, let's just say, workarounds for how I could get my hands on Premiere Pro without spending any money. And we'll just leave it at that. But that allowed me to upgrade my skill set, because essentially I went from using super basic software in iMovie to be able to craft better quality videos and be more efficient with my editing work. So when we're talking about what you need, my need was I needed video editing software. What did I currently have access to? I had access to free software that was already on my Mac, and that was iMovie. If you are on Windows, the comparable one would be Windows Movie Maker. I kind of exhausted what I could do with that by doing my passion projects on there and building my portfolio work up on there. And then I identified that the next step in upgrading my editing skill set would be getting software like Adobe Premiere Pro. And then I looked into how I could make that happen. Once I was able to make that happen, it enabled me to improve my editing workflow and improve the quality of my edits. So what we want you to do is think about what is the area of freelancing that you want to get involved in and what's the equipment you need. Now, just to give another example, you might want to get into cinematography or videography. So this is the actual filming of content. There's one key thing that you need to do that, and that's a camera. Now, in this day and age, pretty much everyone has a really good camera option on them, even though you might not think it's great just off the top of your head. You'd be surprised with what you can do with just basic principles of filmmaking and your smartphone camera. Any iPhone has a really good usable camera and serviceable camera that you can get great quality results with if you're smart about it. Same for a lot of Android phones too. You've got a great camera in your pocket that is already there for you to start testing and experimenting with. And you can start to go out and shoot your own little promos, your own little music videos with your phone camera and really push yourself and see what you can do just with that tool. Now, the main lesson here is not that an iPhone camera is an amazing Hollywood camera that you're going to get really good results with. It's you have a tool that you can already start using today to start creating that portfolio of work or developing the skills that you need to develop so you can start selling your service to clients. So let's take the iPhone example. You shot some stuff on your iPhone. You're kind of finding it a bit tedious. It's getting to the point where you can't really do everything you want. You've identified maybe I need more control of things like exposure, aperture, all these terms that if you're interested in videography, you're going to need to put your own time in to research these principles. From there, you might start researching entry-level cameras. Okay, I want to know what is a DSLR? What's a basic video camera? What can I get for potentially £500, $500? And you're going to start researching the options out there. You're going to start to create a list of the equipment that you really need to get the job done and what's one step up from what you currently have access to. Now, whilst you're kind of building towards that dream piece of equipment or that piece of equipment that's going to level your skills up from where you are now to the next stage, you're going to be smart and you're going to think about what can I do in the meantime to get my hands on a better camera, better editing software, better microphone. This is where being resourceful and being smart about how you do things comes into play. Now, when I was coming up, I didn't necessarily have access to the best cameras or the best microphones, or I didn't necessarily even own a camera at some points in time. I had to be smart and think about, I have a friend who does have a camera and they're working on their career just like I am. Why don't we make a mutual exchange? Perhaps if I can borrow their camera whenever I need it or whenever it's available, I can offer them a few video edits in exchange. Or if I had a specific lens and they had a specific camera body, they can use my lens whenever they need to. I can use their camera body whenever I need to. These type of handshake deals where you're being resourceful and you're being smart about assessing what equipment do people you know have access to, how could you potentially get your hands on it? You want to reach out to them, offer them something in return. You're not going to just say, hey, I want to take all your equipment and I'm not going to give you anything back. You want to think about how it can be a mutually beneficial exchange for you and for them. So offer something to them and see if you can come to terms on an agreement for borrowing their equipment. So what do you do if you don't have any friends or any family in the space with access to any equipment? Then you're going to have to be smart about this. You're going to have to think about using sites where you can potentially rent equipment from people. There's sites such as Fatlala where you can borrow other people's equipment for a fee and you can message them to agree on a deal for potentially to borrow certain equipment at a discounted price. Essentially, what you want to do is assess exactly what it is that you need to get the job done and what you currently have access to. You want to start to research and spend your own time into looking at how are other people doing this and what is the industry practice. Talk to your friends that are already in the space. Get on VidPro Plus and talk to other people about what equipment they're using and start to create a list of the kind of dream equipment you want to work towards. Whilst you're doing that, you want to be resourceful and you want to start building up your network, building up your contacts with people who do have access to equipment, who do have access to things that you need or potentially can show you workarounds for getting access to some of that equipment or software. Also, this is where a bit of your own homework and a bit of your own research comes into play. Now, say you've identified that you really want to get into lighting. I could sit here and talk to you about all the different types of lighting, all the different types of lighting setups, but there's no point because that's not what we're here to do. We're here to get you started in the freelance industry. If you want to be a freelance gaffer or spark, you need to be at the top of your game when it comes to having an awareness of what people are doing in the industry and what is industry practice. From there, you kind of reverse engineer it. Okay, I don't have access to these really super expensive ARRI lights, but I can get this same type of effect with a super cheap softbox, or I can make friends with someone who does have access to lights, and we can maybe strike up a deal where I can borrow some of their lights. So you need to be putting your own time and research into what are the actual real tools that people in your space are using to get the job done, and how you can eventually bridge the gap between where you are now and where you want to be. The main point I want you to take away is there is no barrier to entry in this day and age. You can use whatever you have access to. I know that Jack, when he started, didn't even have a camera, and he still was turning out video after video. So there's no excuses here. You can start with whatever you have access to. It's not going to be perfect. It's not necessarily going to blow people away, but you're getting those reps in and you're building up a portfolio. And each time you do it, it's going to get better and better, and you're going to gradually make those incremental improvements. If you're really stuck as to what you need to get started, or you're not sure what is the actual software, what is the actual equipment in terms of actual, the name of this equipment or the name of this software, there's two things I want you to do. First thing is, as part of this course, we're going to provide a document which will outline some of the basic entry-level equipment that you can get started with today. I want you to also do your own research. I want you to reach out to people on Instagram, on VidPro Plus, and on other platforms and ask them, what are you actually using? What's your main moneymaker in terms of equipment? What would you recommend to someone getting started in photography, videography, lighting, editing? What's the basics? Start reaching out to people and start doing that research as to what you actually need to get the job done. Make a plan of what your kind of end goal will be in terms of getting a step up from what you have access to, and then be resourceful in the meantime. Use what you have to the best of your ability and start working your way towards that goal of getting that next camera, getting that next piece of software that's going to allow you to level up. But don't be stagnant in the meantime, and really make use of what you have, and you'll be surprised with what you can get away with. A lot of my favorite filmmakers, when I look at their interviews, when I look at their very early works, there's absolute shades of what they're doing now, but you see the same themes, you see the same type of camera angles, you see the same basic principles of video creation in all of that work, even though it was on a not HD camera, or it was like they didn't have any lights, so they had to film next to windows. This is where you're going to start learning how to be resourceful and experimental, and you're going to kind of find little cheat codes, little workarounds to get the job done on a budget, so that when you do start making money, you can start putting a percentage of that money to the side to upgrade your skills and invest in your equipment, and you'll start to get better and better results as you do this.
The moral of the story is you start with what you've got. I started on Windows Live Movie Maker, piecing together videos. I then progressed to Sony Vegas. Some of you might even be there currently. None of these were official versions of the software. Read between the lines, if you will. And then finally, I upgraded to Adobe Premiere Pro once I was actually in the game, so to speak, and I had freelance projects coming to me. We've also briefly touched on the fact that I applied those same exact principles to videography. I didn't wait until I had the most fancy setup or the best kit in the world, or the most fancy drone or the best gimbal. Of course not. I started with what I had. My mother had a less than quality photography camera, which did have a video option. Wasn't designed for video at all, but it had a video option. That was some of the early memories I have shooting video. I would take that camera. It was a bit of a negotiation. It meant a lot to her. I'd really convince her I was going to bring it back. And we'd go out with my friends and we'd shoot some funny skits. We'd recreate some stuff we saw on the internet. So again, the principles apply. We were making the most out of the situation that we were in, but we were still, regardless, making progress. You make the most out of the current position you're in, the equipment you have, the software you have, and you upgrade it over time. I don't think you ever stop, Steven Spielberg, wherever that goddamn guy is today, he's got his eye on a pretty new lens, and he's got access to them all. So you and me, of course, we're focused on something bigger, something better, but regardless, you need to make the most out of what you have today. Write down what equipment you need to start pursuing your first project. Like Raya said, you have a phone in your pocket. Maybe you use that. Maybe you've got a mom who's got a photography camera. Maybe you've got a dodgy uncle down the road who can lend you his lens. And maybe you have to piece it together with some unofficial software. Who knows how you get your hands on that software? Maybe you can't afford the paid version. Maybe you find a way to get your hands on the software regardless. We've all been there. Everybody starts from a very similar place. Of course, there's a spectrum, but regardless, we all start at a worse position than we end up. So action steps to finish it off before we progress to the next section. Write down what equipment you need. Write down what equipment you have. Put a plan together for the future. Maybe there's a, better equipment you want to get your hands on, but regardless, identify where you're sat on today. What software you can access today, whether it be ill-gotten or officially acquired. And if videography or cinematography is your chosen medium, your chosen vehicle, then write down what equipment you have or what equipment you have access to, whether it be an unofficial deal with your grandma or your mom, or you're just shooting on your phone and again, making the most out of your current situation.
So in this module, what we're going to cover is one of the questions I've been asked the most often, which is, should you ever work for free? Now, working for free can be quite a complicated subject, and a lot of people get daunted when they perhaps get offered a project, but there's no pay attached to it. So the aim of this is to give you a bit more clarity about when you should and shouldn't take free work, and what some of the potential benefits and my personal experience with taking free work. In my first year freelancing, a number of opportunities came my way which were free/unpaid projects. I did end up taking these projects, and they ended up actually being super valuable for me, and I'm going to tell you why. At this point in my freelancing career, I hadn't had a lot of experience, especially being on set, working with directors, working with full production teams, and I hadn't really built up a wealth of experience of how I could fit in on set and how I could actually offer value to productions. One of my first experiences with free work was when I got the opportunity to shoot some behind the scenes content for a fashion photographer who was shooting some fashion editorial work for Hunger magazine. Hunger magazine is a popular fashion editorial magazine and online publication. So my interest was piqued as this would give me an opportunity to see how a fashion editorial shoot was run that would go on a well-known publication such as Hunger magazine. So I was tasked with capturing a bunch of behind the scenes content so that the photographer can use it on their social media, just to kind of show people what they've been working on for the Hunger magazine project. Now, whilst I was on this shoot, it ended up being a really valuable experience for me, because when there was a lunch break, I would be able to go around and speak to the different people on the team, ask them what they're doing, ask them how they got started in their line of work, ask them what their personal experiences were with freelancing. I was also able to speak to the photographer himself and get some advice one-on-one with him, and just tell him kind of where I was in my career. Hey, look, I'm just starting out. I'm really trying to get into this as a freelancer. Do you have any advice for me? What would you advise me to do in terms of finding clients? I was able to speak to him about a bunch of different topics, literally eating a slice of pizza over a half an hour lunch break. This ended up being really invaluable for me, because rather than being stagnant and not really knowing what to do, I was able to get out there and actually get on a production. And whilst I wasn't being paid, I was actually developing work for all my portfolio, and I was building up connections in the industry. Fast forward a few months later, and I actually did end up landing some paid work with the photographer who brought me on board in the first place. He saw how enthusiastic I was. He saw me trying to make the most of the free opportunities he'd given me, and he was able to see the value I could provide. So he started to pay me to shoot little fashion films or help him as an assistant on some of his projects. Now, the reason I'm telling you this story is because initially, when I first was reached out for free projects, I was unsure whether this was the right thing to do. I didn't want to be exploited. I didn't want to be taken advantage of. But I did want to build my portfolio. I did want to build my connections in the industry, and I did want to get experience on set and understanding how productions run. So in the end, I ended up getting all of those things because I was willing to take a risk, and I did actually end up getting paid work from this particular client. Now, I've also done free work in a bunch of different areas, and most of the time, maybe not all of the time, I have ended up also getting paid work from those people I was working with. And in the long run, it's ended up being a really strong and solid relationship that I've gotten repeat work from. And to this day, there's people that I shot for free in the early days and I still work for now, and they pay me every time now. So when it comes to free work, I want to give you some guidance on how you can assess these opportunities. When you're talking about free work, what we're talking about is a value exchange. You're offering your services in exchange for something. Now, at the current point in time, it may not be for pay, but what you have to assess is, okay, well, if it's not for pay, what is it in exchange for? In my situation, it happened to be in exchange for building contacts, building my portfolio, and building an understanding of the industry practice and where I might be able to fit into that industry. Once I'd done a few free projects, I was able to take that work that I'd put on my portfolio, and I was able to actually negotiate rates with clients I hadn't worked with before, as I was able to show them other projects I'd completed, and I was able to show them what I could bring to the table. So I already had proof of concept, and they had no idea that the work I was showing them I hadn't been paid for. As far as they were concerned, I was more than justified to charge them for the work I was providing. So you need to look at free work like this. Free work is a training ground to prove yourself and to potentially exchange value. You're going to offer someone something, and you're not necessarily going to get a monetary incentive in return, but what you may get are networking opportunities, experience, work for your portfolio. All of these different aspects are potential advantages of taking free work. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean you're always going to come out of free projects with a ton of value. The way I like to look at these things is by assessing where you currently are. If you're a freelancer who's just getting started, you don't have a portfolio, you don't have any connections, and you don't have any work to show for yourself, you're already in a position where you need to really grind it out and make something happen. If someone comes to you with an opportunity for a free project, that's an opportunity to prove yourself and to start yourself gaining that momentum in the right direction. Now, something I would be wary of and I would be mindful of is when people are offering you opportunities in exchange for exposure. Exposure is a very vague term and it doesn't actually mean anything tangible. We can't really quantify what exposure is. Does that mean they're going to put it on their story and tag you? Does that mean they're going to put a post on their Instagram and tag you? Does that mean they're going to recommend you to people when someone's asking for a video editor or a videographer? Exposure is extremely vague and in of itself, it doesn't mean anything. So if someone's offering you exposure in return for free services, you need to really drill down with them. What is it that they're actually offering you? Will you be able to take the work you produce and put it on your portfolio? Will you receive credits for the production, perhaps as a production assistant, a runner, a video editor, whatever service you provide? Will you be able to take that credit and put it on your website and put it on your portfolio? If someone is just outright selling you, do this job for me for free and I'll pay you in exposure, be careful. It's not always going to be a bad thing and it may work out, but just be really clear with them. Okay, what exactly is the value I'm taking away from this? What can I do with the free work I'm providing? Also, you are guaranteed to have some experiences where you may take a free project, you may not have a great time on the production, people may be really antisocial and you may not get the most out of it on the day. Here's what I would say. If you are smart about it, you can always come away with some kind of value, even if it's not directly there and it's not directly tangible. For example, if you get on set and you ask someone on set to shoot a few behind the scenes stills of you in action, doing your job, that's going to be social proof that you can then put on your social media pages, demonstrating that you are actively making your steps into the industry. This could help you to start creating the basis for your show reel, which you could then put on your website. Essentially, it's up to you to decide whether free work is worth taking or not, but you need to be smart about how you can gain value from a free opportunity and as well as offer value. When it comes to free work, something that I always advise people to do is to make sure they're not losing money. It's okay to not necessarily be gaining money, but you don't want to be losing money and you don't want to be in a financially worse position than when you started the job. My best way of advising people to handle this is to ensure that they can get their expenses covered. Now, this would be things like fuel expenses, potentially your food, anything that's going to be an outright cost for you. Asking for that to be covered, you're well within your rights and you can be smart and polite about how you ask for it. The way I would actually go about asking for your expenses to be covered is to first be super enthusiastic about the opportunity and thank the person for giving the opportunity. Say, hey, so-and-so, I'm really looking forward to working on this project with you. Here's some ideas I've had for the project. I just wanted to ask if there was any room in the budget to cover my travel expenses, food expenses. Now, they're not always going to say yes. Most of the time they will, because most of the time they respect where you're coming from. You're offering something for free and they don't want you to be out of pocket. So they will cover your travel expenses in most occasions. If they don't, it doesn't mean the job's completely not worth taking, but it's something to bear in mind. If they're not going to cover your expenses, you need to weigh up how much you're actually going to be spending on getting the job done. If, for example, you're only going to spend £8 on a tube or train to the shoot, maybe a £3.50 meal deal will do you for the day, you're not going to be super out of pocket, and then you are still going to have work to show for it. You are potentially going to have the opportunity to document you being on set, and you are potentially going to come out of it with enough value to make it worthwhile. Now, say you have to drive 100 miles down the country, provide a bunch of your own equipment, and spend 10 hours editing the thing. It's probably not going to be worth your time, and you probably are going to be getting taken advantage of in a way that's going to make you feel annoyed and upset, and maybe that you regret taking the project. So you just have to weigh up these things when you're making a decision as to whether to take free work or not. I would recommend in nearly all occasions you at least ask for your expenses to be covered. At base travel expenses, if not food expenses, you can ask, is there any catering available on set? Will I be provided food on set or do I need to bring my own lunch? A lot of the times you'll get a direct answer on that, and then at least you know that you're not going to be out of pocket when you do this free work. Something to really assess is the person that you're offering to do the free work for. If this person's got a bunch of incredible work and is doing the type of work you aspire to do, you're going to potentially shortcut hours of mistakes and learning by being able to get in a room with that person and just ask them a question over a coffee, ask them a question over lunch. You're going to potentially have an unofficial mentor who's going to help you along your way, and that can be super valuable in this industry. A lot of people pay hundreds of dollars for mentors in this space, and if you can potentially build a mentor relationship with someone in exchange for your free services, you're already going to be ahead of people that are learning just through failure and hard work. You're going to potentially have someone to guide you and help you so you don't have to make all the same mistakes that they did. In my early days, when I was freelancing, I was pretty scared. I didn't have a lot of money and I didn't want to lose money. But at the same time, I knew I had to make progress and I had to make content. So I weighed up the options and I kind of weighed out the pros and cons of doing each piece of free work as and when it came in. Most of the time, what I would do was look up the person who was contacting me for the free work or offering me the free work, and I would see what they had actually built on their portfolio. If it was of interest to me, for example, they'd worked with a bunch of fashion clients, they had some really cool looking work, they had an aesthetic I had no idea how they achieved, I would take the job because I'd get the opportunity to ask them some questions, to learn by watching, and to gain some experience. If people reached out for a super boring corporate job and it didn't necessarily have any incentive in the line of work I wanted to get into, and they weren't going to cover my expenses, or they weren't even going to offer me something small in return, then it didn't necessarily always make sense. So whilst you're not getting paid financially or monetarily, you do want to think about what are the potential benefits to you. And if you're in a point in your career where you're really just looking to develop your skills, gain experience, and build a portfolio, free work is often a way to go. Do be careful, however, as there are people out there that will exploit you and take advantage if you allow them to. And you need to set your own personal boundaries when it comes to free work. For example, you make it extremely clear what you offer that client. In my case, I was offering one edited behind the scenes video. This meant showing up to one shoot day and spending 1 6 to 8 hour day editing. That wasn't a super difficult thing for me to deliver on, and I was actually super motivated and keen to work at the time, and I would much rather been doing that than only going to uni classes and not getting any real industry experience.
Action steps. The number one thing I want you guys to remember is doing free work is a stepping stone. This is a mutual value exchange. The client or the person who you're doing the free work for is getting a free service, and you are receiving a number of things in return. It might be experience in the field actually doing the thing. It could be propaganda, aka a video for your portfolio, some behind the scenes pictures for you to post on the internet. Maybe they're going to tag you in the post as a camera assistant or whatever the case may be, and that could be good exposure for you. So ultimately, the action steps are, when free work comes in, assess the pros and cons and make sure that this is a mutual value exchange, which means if you've done 7 free projects for them, at this point, it's not a mutual value exchange. They're likely getting the lion's share of the value, and that's not a situation which you can extract the most value from. You've likely already extracted all the value that could have been extracted. So use free work as a stepping stone and use free work as a mutual value exchange. They get free work, and in exchange, you get some propaganda, some experience, some added pieces to your track record, which we're ultimately going to use to sell down the road. So a little bit from me on free work. This stage is about establishing a cool portfolio, building a track record, establishing client relationships. You know, the free work area usually happens just intuitively. Okay, most people are out here, they already have some editing skills, they do a little project for their friend, or they do a little project for here or there, or even like for school, a class project. You're already naturally doing some free work, whether you think about it or not. Now, free work is phenomenal for anybody at the start of their career. As I said, I actually don't think I know a single freelancer that didn't do free work at the start of their career. It's just the natural progression of things. A fantastic strategy that I often tell a lot of you guys inside VP Plus and anybody else that asks me, I tell them that a value-first approach can often, for a lot of you, be the best entry into the game. And that's a free work method. What is the value-first approach? If you've made it to VP Plus, you've likely heard me touch on it before, but the value-first approach isn't trying to be anything, elusive. It's exactly what it sounds like. You are providing value upfront to a client to prove that you're actually someone of value. Simple as that. So let's say how that will work for a YouTuber client. Say you had 0 work today, which means you stand no chance of pitching a client to pay you, because they're going to be like, hey, what have you done before? You've done nothing. So you need to manufacture some kind of track record. You could do that by, downloading some clips off the internet, stock footage, etc. But a fantastic way to do it is to find a YouTuber or find a client, anybody, identify someone who you could actually provide more value to, aka their content maybe isn't up to par to your standards and you feel as though you could genuinely improve it. You download their content, you make it better, and you send it back to them. Hey, Jared, been getting so much value from your videos. I wanted to find any way I could to repay the favor. Had some time this afternoon, edited up a piece of content. Here you go. If you want this on a consistent basis, let me know. If not, you have my blessing to use it on social media wherever you want. The beautiful part about an approach like that is, what are they going to say? Screw you? Hell no. There's going to be absolutely 0 possible negative repercussions for that. Worst case scenario, they don't respond. You now have a piece for your portfolio. You edited that video, it's an accurate representation of your work, that can go in your portfolio. Best case scenario, they actually give you a message back, they say, what's up? That's incredible. Thank you so much for taking the time. And you know what? This is really competitive. What's your rate going forward for similar content like that? You tell them your rate, and all of a sudden you might have a job. Another fantastic way to get into free work, where this is, again, capitalizing on a mutually beneficial situation, is to offer your services as a mentoree to someone who's already in the game. I advise kids who do this when I go and speak at schools, and I tell them this is one of the best ways to get into the game. Imagine you want to be a music video director. Now, should you go out here and, just try and bootstrap it all yourself? You certainly can. I did that. Many people do. However, what about this as an approach? You find another music video director on Instagram, on the internet, who's doing pretty good. They're in your local area. You hit them up and say, hey, what's up? I see what you're doing. I love it. I'd love to come through and shoot behind the scenes content for you completely for free. I'll give you the content. You can use it for micro content on the internet, put it on your social media. I just want to come and absorb some knowledge. They say yes because it's a no-brainer. Why wouldn't they? They're getting free content. And you are getting the experience of being on set. You're establishing a connection with someone way further along in their career than you. And if that connection is made correctly and you establish a good relationship, undoubtedly, you can become their right-hand man, the second in command, and they might even offload work to you, outsource it to you, even bring you along to shoots in the future for paid stuff. Or at the very least, you might meet other people on site that now associate you with a big production, and they'll get your details, etc. And it might transpire for work for you as well, even though you might not have been getting paid on that specific location and that specific project. And listen, of course, it can be daunting reaching out to people. And am I going to sit here and say every person is going to be, the knight in shining armor who just takes you under their wing and blesses you with this amazing experience? Of course not, right? You are going to have to, understand there's an element of trial and error here. You might message 10, 20 different directors that you look up to, or 10, 20 different X that you look up to. And 2 of them respond and 1 of them accepts. That doesn't matter. It's a numbers game at the end of the day. Don't be discouraged reaching out to people. You'd truly be surprised how many people would love to take someone under their wing and, actually would enjoy doing that because they were in the same position as you once upon a time. And, you could definitely establish a fantastic situation like that. So let's also break down a couple simple things just to rally off real quick in terms of what other free work looks like. When I was starting as a music video director, I shot 20, 30, 40 music videos completely for free. They were more like one-take bars videos, freestyles, maybe some music videos, etc. But essentially, I was doing these completely for free. It was a mutual exchange, though. I had a YouTube channel called TQ9 TV. You can search it up right now, and you can see the music videos I'm talking about. And I wanted to film music videos. So I would come to a rapper. They had no budget. I would shoot them a free video, but I got to put the video on my channel. So I built up this community channel, kind of like a SBTV, GRM Daily type of thing on a much smaller level. And again, it was a mutual value exchange. Now, when I came around to charge for music videos in the future, and actually some of the rappers that I shot free videos for, originally for TQ9 TV, ended up in the coming years circling back and paying me for full productions and full projects when they'd matured as an artist. And essentially, we established that connection off of a free basis. My entry into the nightlife videography scene happened in a very similar way. I shot my first ever nightclub for free for my boy TJ. TJ rented a nightclub, a dodgy little basement venue up in Bristol. He hired a couple DJs and he put on an event. I was the one who came through and filmed the after movie. That piece of content was the sample I used to sell that to the next guy for £50 a video. And then it was actually, I went down for the video after that, was £30 a video. And then we went back to 50, 60, 70, 80, 100, built it up to £250 a video. That's around like $350, $400 a video, 10-hour shoot. So a decent hourly rate. But the point is, started for free. I wasn't looking for the instant return on investment. I just knew that, okay, cool, intuitively, it's a good idea to get these samples under my belt. And the more track record I have, the more samples under my belt, the easier I could sell this to someone in the future. And that's the moral of the story. The working for free stage is building a portfolio, building a track record, establishing the foundation that in the next steps we're going to use to sell to the client.
We've spoken a bit about what you want to get out of freelancing. We've helped you to assess what skills you have, what are your strengths, what are your weaknesses. We've spoken about what do you actually need to get the job done or to start practicing your skills today. Now we're going to talk about the importance of building a portfolio and what that means as a freelancer. Now, the best way I like to explain a portfolio to people who don't really know what I'm talking about is to see it as a scoreboard of the work that you have done or accomplished. You essentially need a place which is a public record of the projects you've worked on and what you've done on those projects, and neatly packages those projects so that it's super easy for anyone who's interested in working with you or hiring you to see what you can offer and to get a taste of your style and what services you can provide. You don't need to be too specific in terms of what a portfolio needs to look like. So I'm just going to run through a few of the different formats that your portfolio could be presented in. A very common one for freelancers and one that leads to great results is to have a great website or landing page. This is something that neatly presents your work in either like a Wix website, a Squarespace website, any type of website where essentially the person who clicks on your site is immediately going to be presented with 3 to 6 of your best projects, maybe your show reel, maybe a little brief biography about what services you do and what you can actually offer your client. Now, the reason for this is if someone's interested in hiring you and you can point them to your website, they're immediately going to see your 3 to 6 best projects. They're immediately going to get a sense of your style and what you can offer them as a service. Something else that would count as a portfolio is an Instagram page. This is somewhere where you upload your best content and you can have a neat presentation of your content, and people can look at your Instagram page and get a sense of your style, what projects you've worked on, and what you're looking to engage in work-wise. Again, another portfolio would be LinkedIn, which is allowing you to post your work, curate what work you want to put out there for the world, and allowing potential employers to see that work and contact you directly via the platform. Essentially, in the modern age, most of portfolio building comes down to two things: website building and social media building. You want to have a website which neatly packages your most recent projects that you're most proud of, that you want to get more work doing, and kind of outlines the services that you can provide to a client. You want to have social media pages which neatly package what you're currently working on, what projects you've worked on, and what you're looking to get more work in. And you want to actively be consistent with posting on these platforms. So just to give you an example of what I do, I personally keep a log of all the jobs that I've done, and I highlight the jobs that I think I want to share on social media or on my website because they could potentially get me more work in that space. For example, if I've done a concert film for an artist who's really prolific and I'm really excited that I got the chance to work with, I'm going to put it on my website so that when people go on my website, they're going to see, oh, he's done this concert film for this really well-known artist, and I'm looking for a concert film myself. So I'm going to reach out to this guy because he's got 3 examples of really solid concert films he's done for different artists here. Now, once I've posted that on my website, I'm then going to filter that down to social media. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with LinkedIn. I'm going to post it on LinkedIn, and my LinkedIn audience can see it on there. And if they're really interested in hiring me for the same work, they can contact me through there. Once I've posted it on my website and my LinkedIn, then I essentially take the same post and I put that on my Instagram, I put that on my Facebook, and I put that on my Twitter or any other social media profile pages I have. So essentially what I've done is I've created a job log. I've identified this is a piece of work I want to get more work doing, or I want to showcase to the world because it really showcases my ability and my style. And I want to put it out there in as many places as possible that potential people who want to work on it with can see it. Now, the thing to bear in mind with portfolio building is you're not necessarily going to post a project and immediately be flooded in the DMs with people saying, I want to work with you, I want to do this, I want to do that. What you're doing is you're building a presence for yourself. You're showing people, I'm actually out here on a day-to-day basis, creating projects, putting projects out there for people to see, and I'm working and I'm being proactive and I'm also shouting about it. Some of the issues I've faced in my own personal journey as a freelancer was I've been working really hard and I haven't actually told people what I've been working on. I've bumped into friends and family after not having seen them for a while, and they've asked me, Rios, what are you actually doing at the moment? What are you actually working on? There's no worse feeling in the world because it's really hard to then go, oh, well, I've actually been working really hard, but I just didn't want to put it out there because I wasn't really proud of it, or I wasn't really ready to show the world my work yet. The way you want to look at it is on the flip side, I've also seen friends and family after a period of really hard work, and I've actively been posting my work on social media, on LinkedIn, even if not super frequently, once a week, once every 2 weeks. They've immediately come up to me and said, oh, I saw that work you did with that artist. That looked amazing. Like, could we potentially work on something sometime? Oh, I've seen that project you worked on with so-and-so, and I've got a mate who's actually launching a clothing company. Would you be interested in working with them? Sure, give me their details or send them a DM. So what I'm trying to get at here is publishing your work and showcasing your work isn't necessarily for the direct outcome of converting to clients, but it may actually have that effect because you're building a presence and you're showing people what it is you're working on and what skills you're developing, and you're giving people a sense of what you're actually actively doing in a professional capacity. This allows people to put you into that box of, someone might speak to them and say, I'm looking for a really good video editor. And they might go, I've seen Rios is actively working as a video editor right now. Let me put you in contact. I've seen Rios can shoot concert films. So let me put you in contact. I know that Rios can capture models really well. So let me put you in contact because you guys might have some room to collaborate. So don't see this as a direct conversion to sales. See it as building your own personal brand and your own online presence, and see it as a scoreboard for yourself. First and foremost, you want to be able to look at your website, look at your social media pages and say, I did all these projects last year and I'm really proud of this work, and I want to transfer that momentum into these next slate of projects I've got, And then that will be new work to replace and update your portfolio with. When you feel ready to, and when your portfolio is in a place where you are ready to start getting clients and you are ready to start putting your work out there, share it as much as possible and put it on every social media page that is applicable to you. Okay, now what do you do if you've got no clients, you've got no projects to show on your portfolio, and you've got absolutely nothing that you can put out there? If you're in a place where you're starting from ground zero and you've got nothing to show for yourself, you're in a good place because you can get started today on creating ideas and creating little projects to put on your portfolio. Something that all my friends are doing that work on commercials and branded content is shooting spec commercials. One of my friends, he works with really high profile clients, and he just started creating little spec commercials where he put together a little spec demo video as if he was making a Nike advert. He came up with a storyboard, he got his cousin involved, and he just shot a little project to show what he could do if he was to work with Nike. Now, off the back of that, he's actually landed better clients because he's kind of proven that he can work on that level and he can demonstrate that. Now, Nike didn't reach out to him and say, can you make this video for us? But it didn't stop him showing what he would do if he worked on a Nike project. The same goes for myself. When I've worked on music videos, okay, maybe I'm not working with the highest artists yet. I'm working with some well-known artists and some lesser known artists, but I'm applying the same principles that I would if I was working with artists at the top of the industry, and I'm proving myself as at the scale I'm at. And every time I'm doing that, I'm potentially getting a more prolific client, or I'm getting a client that is more well-known, and I'm able to take all that practice and put it into execution. So if you don't have anything in a backlog, you've not worked with any clients, you've not shot any passion projects, you've not got any work to put on your portfolio, you're going to start by getting some sample projects underway. You're going to start planning, okay, well, I really want to get into the promotional content space where I'm shooting stuff for brands to go on their social media and to go on their website. I'm going to pick a brand from one of the world's leading brands, and I'm just going to come up with a concept, and I'm actually going to go out there and shoot it and edit it. And you're going to make it clear that when you post this, okay, you weren't commissioned by Nike, but it's a spec project, it's a demo project of what you would do if you were. And you're going to treat it like Nike has come to you and you've actually done that work for them, and you're going to push yourself to deliver the best project possible, even though it's just for yourself. Now, the reason you're doing this is because the second you've done that and you've exported that video, you have a piece of work that you can put on your portfolio, and the start of your portfolio has begun. And once you've started your portfolio, you can only grow and you can only develop further from there. See your portfolio as an ever-growing scoreboard of your work, and you want to be consistently updating this and changing this. A problem I've had as a creative is I've kind of gotten paralyzed by the portfolio, and I've just left it because I didn't think it was that important. I didn't think I needed to be shouting about what work I was doing. Then someone would ask me, oh, are you available for this type of work? Can you send us your work? And I had nowhere to send them, and I had to quickly edit all my work together because I didn't have anything to show. So when it comes to portfolio, you want to break it down in two components. One of them is having a scoreboard for yourself that is ever evolving, ever changing. And this is purely for you to be able to refer back to, see what you have been working on, and be really proud of yourself and have a list of your accomplishments at the ready for you to be able to refer to. The other half of it is having that public presentation, whether that's your website, your LinkedIn page, your social media pages like Instagram, TikTok, any of those things, where you're publicly presenting the work you've done and the work you want to get more of to the world. So that if someone happens to stumble across your profile, it's really clear to them what it is exactly you do, what your most recent projects are, what you can offer them in terms of your skills and service. And then from there, if they wanted to reach out and contact you, they've got a DM button that they can send you a message on. They've got perhaps your emails in your bio. They've got these easy ways, and you're making it really easy and straightforward for how to reach out to you.
So nuts and bolts of it, the absolute most simplistic form. A portfolio is a public presentation of your work. How you achieve that is completely up to you. I will walk through a couple ways that I was able to achieve it. When I was a freelancer on Upwork, when I was selling my services as a remote video editor, and they obviously needed a link to see what I'd done in hopes of them being inspired to hire me, I would send them a portfolio website. It was more of a landing page with a VSL, a video sales letter, or more commonly known in here as in Video Production Plus as a video intro, the 1-minute video intro pitch video. So I'd send my link, jackcolevideo.com, whatever it was called. They'd click on it and they could see two things. One, me, an actual pitch video right on the front. It was a 1-minute pitch. Hey, what's up? I'm Jack. I'm a video editor, blah, blah, blah. Personal, again, relating to assessing my skills. Speaking was a skill of mine. I decided to capitalize on that, even on my portfolio. But then they'd also just scroll down the page and they'd see my best pieces. It would be organized in various different categories, YouTube videos, promo videos, etc., etc. So the core, as I just said, is a public presentation of my work. That, for some, is just an Instagram page. For my videography clients, I used a personal brand. I would push my content through YouTube, yes, but mainly Instagram. I would shove content on Instagram, shove content on Facebook, and I would do a couple different things. I'd do final projects, but I'd also do behind the scenes, documenting me on site, shooting stuff, me in the office, editing a project, whatever the case may be. I would actually document what behind the scenes looked like, which acted as phenomenal content for my personal brand. So how do you actually build a portfolio? Well, that's a great question. Number one, you could do spec projects, passion projects, like Raya said. Alternatively, we have designed the video production plus practice projects section specifically for you to manufacture a portfolio. You can go into our practice project section. You can edit a short, a TikTok, a YouTube video. We've got club videos in there. We've got music videos in there. We have promo videos for businesses in there. And you have our blessing to edit that content up and put that on your portfolio. Did you go and do the full production? No, but it's still an accurate representation of your skills, seeing as you have taken that content, downloaded the raw files, edited it up into a completed piece, and you've seen that production through. That is your work right there, and you can put that on your portfolio. Alternatively, which we're going to get into more extensively in the next couple sections, you can do free work. I won't get into that too much, but that is undoubtedly the superpower to how so many freelancers started their journey. I started doing free work for people. Raya started doing free work for people. If I think about it, I might not know a single freelancer that didn't start doing free work for people. Ultimately, before you even realize what skills you're sitting on to sell, you've probably begun exploring those skills from an experimental perspective beforehand anyways, which is why the freelancing game, again, gets greater later. You want to figure out what you're sat on right now, piece together a portfolio, and it's an ever-evolving project, so to speak. My portfolio 5 years ago looks very different to my portfolio today. We'll also talk a little bit in the sections to come about personal brand and how powerful a modern-day portfolio can be, and how powerful documenting the journey and a little bit more of a less traditional approach to a portfolio can massively skyrocket your career as well. We're going to talk about that in the coming up sections, but ultimately, building a portfolio is simply a public presentation of your work. However you go about doing that is completely up to you.
So what we're going to be covering in this module is how you can go from doing those free projects and that free work to getting your first ever paid job. Now, if you've been following the course and actually taking the action steps that Jack suggested each module, you'll already be in a position where you've done the free work, you've built a portfolio of some description, and you're practicing your skills on a regular basis. Now, what you'll find as a general trend in this space is that the people that you've done free work for eventually may convert to paying clients. And this happened to me personally quite a few times. Did a few free projects for a bunch of different clients, and eventually all of them did end up paying me, even if the rate wasn't extremely high. So I went from doing free projects for them maybe 3-4 times before I started charging them anywhere between $50 and $150 per video. Now that might not sound like a lot, but that's already a jump from unpaid work to paid work. And that's essentially what we're trying to teach you here, how to jump from unpaid work to paid work. First point is, if you've done the steps so far, you're already on the right path. And if you're starting to build those relationships where you're working for people for free, you can eventually convert them later on. Now, the best way to do this is if you've worked with someone a certain amount of times and you feel that you really have provided value and you really have offered them a great service completely free of charge, you are within your rights that if they come back to you and ask for the same project again, you make a case for yourself and you say, I've delivered for you so far however many projects completely free of charge on the basis of expenses paid. As my work rate is picking up and my workload is getting harder, perhaps you're studying, perhaps you've got another job. In order for this to be worth my time, I'll need to ask for a small fee of anywhere from $50 to $150. Now, the price can vary and you can go in with whatever price you want. The reason I'm saying $50 to $150 is because when you're going from unpaid to paid, even that small jump from 0 to 50 to 150 is a real tangible step for you to take in the right direction in terms of getting paid. So those clients that you're working for free are not always going to convert to paid clients. However, if 1 or 2 of them do convert to paid clients, you've already gone from getting unpaid work to paid work. So the other effect you may have from the free work that you've done so far is a process called word of mouth, which is where the people you work for free will recommend you to other people who may value your services or may have a demand for them. So when these new clients come to you and you've already done your free work and put hours into building your portfolio, you can now start to negotiate prices. The way I like to do this is I like to ask people, hey, do you have a budget in mind for this project, or would you like me to suggest a quote? And this gives a window for them to easily say to you, we have $100, $200, whatever amount of dollars that they're working with. Can you do the project for this? And then you have the choice to say yes or no. And if they say, could you please suggest a quote? You then have an opportunity to charge what you're comfortable with. If you've not charged people before and you're not super comfortable with how you should price your services, you can start lower, $50, $100. And then every time you do a project, you can start to raise your rates by what you deem your value is worth. Maybe you raise your rates from $100 to $150. That will become a snowball effect where you incrementally start charging more, and then you're able to get to a place where you are actually charging a considerable amount per project. But like we said, the freelance game gets greater later, and you're gradually building up your pay as you go along. So the step from $0 to $50, even though it doesn't seem like it, is a massive one, because you're going from unpaid to paid. And the second you go from unpaid to paid, you can start to build up your rates. So you might get your first paid jobs from the people you've worked for free, or the people you work for free might recommend you to other people, and you may get jobs that way. You've also been building an online presence and building a portfolio, and people may find that and may contact you, and you can then ask them if they have a budget or they want you to provide a quote. So those are a couple of ways that you can start transitioning to paid work. Now, those methods we've just spoken to are not necessarily proactive approaches. You're counting on your work paying off in the long run and people reaching out to you because they've seen your work and they have a demand for your services. What do you do if people aren't reaching out to you? You're doing the free work, you're doing the portfolio, you're developing your skills, and you're just getting no offers in. You open the inbox, there's no emails. You open the text, there's no text. You open your DMs, there's no DMs. What do you do in those times where you're not getting any inbound messages and you're not getting any potential clients coming your way? Now, this is where we get into something called outreach. Outreach is the opposite of waiting for people to come to you, and it's actively going out there and trying to find clients and get your offer to clients in the hopes that you may convert a percentage of them to paying clients. Now, what does this actually look like? I'm not going to go into extreme amounts of detail here about outreach because Jack's already covered that in a specific course called the Outreach Masterclass. Highly recommend you check that out if you're a member of the platform. He's also covered it extensively on his YouTube channel as well, so definitely check out Jack's wealth of resources on outreach specifically, as it's a topic he's covered ad nauseum. So the first step in actually doing outreach is making yourself aware of people you could potentially offer your service or skills to. This is where you want to be actively making yourself aware of the people in your industry or space. You want to be looking on social media and following different pages of creators out there that are doing the work that you want to move towards doing. And you want to see, okay, well, they've done this great music video, but they haven't got any promo content from that music video. They haven't got any behind the scenes stills from that music video. They haven't got a short social media aspect ratio cut of the video that they can put on their Instagram reels. You want to start making yourself aware of the people you could potentially work with and making a list of these people. Being realistic, this list should be no less than 30 to 100 people. The sweet spot's probably between 50 and 100 people, as it gives you that kind of spread of quantity where you can really send messages out there and really potentially see some results. My approach for actually structuring messages is a very simple one, and it's called the 5-line pitch. The first line of the pitch is the introduction. How did you find this person? Hey, I've been following your career for a long time. I'm a big fan of your work. I particularly enjoyed the project you did with this artist. The next line is, what can you offer that person? So you've introduced yourself, you've told them how you found them. Whatever your unique offer is, whatever your unique skills that you've identified earlier is, this is when you're going to pitch that to this person. In my particular case, I would say I'm a video editor and I specialize in making music video content for artists to help grow their exposure and their personal brand. The next line is going to be the benefit, and that's exactly how your offer benefits them and helps them to solve their pain point. For example, if you're reaching out to YouTubers to edit social media content for their social media profiles, what you would say is, hey, I specialize in creating short form content for YouTubers and influencers. This will benefit you as I'll create short, snappy edits, which will help you to grow a fan base and will allow you to focus on scripting and recording your videos, freeing up the time that you would normally spend on editing these videos. I've just made it clear there that they're going to save time by using my service, and they're going to get engaging and concise video content back in return. This will help them to grow their audience, and it will also save them time to work on developing their content. After you've made clear exactly what the benefit is, the next line in your pitch will be the foot in the door. So what you're going to do is you're going to make it super clear that if they reply to your message, you can send them something of value immediately. For example, if we take the YouTuber example I gave earlier, you could say, if you're interested in my offer, simply reply to this message and I'll send you a video of yours that I re-edited to be more snappy and concise so you can see exactly what services I'm offering. You're essentially trying to get them to respond to you, so you're offering something to give them an incentive to respond to you. If you can't think of a direct value add that you can offer, such as a sample edit or something like that, and that can be a time-consuming process to do that for each individual client, you can simply say, if you're interested in this offer, simply reply and perhaps we can schedule in a brief 10-minute call on Wednesday or a day that suits you. That again gives them an easy action step that they can take in regards to replying to you, and it makes it straightforward what exactly you're expecting from them in a response. Something I really want you to focus on in terms of your pitching and your 5-line pitch is make it as personalized as you can. Really do your research, spend 5-10 minutes, half an hour researching the person you're pitching to and really seeing what is the unique thing they do, what is it you really like about them, and then why is what they do a good fit for what you have to offer. Even if you just say something like, hey, I noticed you like shooting on film, I've got a wealth of experience shooting on 8mm and 16mm film. You're already making yourself a much better candidate than someone that messages them, hey, I like your videos. You're making it personalized, you're making it unique, and you're hopefully going to be more memorable and you're going to stick out to that person and you're going to improve your chances of getting a response. Another thing to keep in mind is the difference between hot and cold leads. For example, say you're shooting an event, someone sees you with a camera and you happen to get talking and they mention to you that their nephew's a musician who's looking to work on music videos. Now, what you want to do there is immediately ask them for their nephew or whoever they're talking about social media so you can shoot the message, hey, I met your uncle at this event I was shooting. He mentioned that you're looking for a music videographer. I'd be interested in working with you. Here's my work. What you're doing there is you're actively networking. You're actively looking for opportunities. Because someone's potentially bridging that gap for you by connecting you with someone who's interested in your services, the lead's already technically warm, so to speak, as you have a way in. You can say to them, I met this person and they recommended me to contact you as you're looking for my service. So you always want to be keeping your eye out and keeping your ear out for these opportunities where there's some kind of warm approach where you've been introduced to this person through someone else and you can offer your services outright. And you want to be proactive with this. You don't want to wait for that person's musician nephew to reach out to you. You want to reach out to them and show them exactly what you can offer and how much you charge them for that service. This is not to say that there's no value in doing cold approaches. And I personally believe you should be doing both warm and cold approaches. Reaching out to people that may potentially have heard of you, already be aware of your services, and reaching out to people where there could be a potential demand for your services and a good fit for what you have to offer. Also, something I would emphasize is you don't always want to lead with your prices in your 5-line pitch. All you're essentially doing is wanting to get a response. Once you get a response, you're already one step closer to closing that person, but you don't want to necessarily push really hard and go, hey, here's how much I charge. Can you pay me that? Because it just comes across too salesy and it comes across too impersonal and it comes across like you're trying to make a quick check. What you're actually trying to do is build a relationship with this person. And then hopefully when they see the value in what you have to bring, you can then talk about prices and talk about locking in a fee. So you want to start in a friendly, soft, approachable manner. And you don't want to just be pushing to get them to secure a deal straight away. Now, we've talked a bit about how to get your first paid job, and I'm just going to talk a little bit about how you can maximize how much you are getting paid for each project. Now, when you're offering multiple services to someone, you need to be smart and you can price these services separately. For example, I charge people to shoot, I charge people to edit, I charge people to deliver social media aspect ratio versions of their edit, I charge people to color grade. These are all different aspects that I'm offering to someone. And in the past, I made the mistake of just saying, hey, I'll do everything for £200. Now, how I structure my deals is I offer them a price for the filming, I offer them a price for the editing, I offer them a price for all the different aspects I'm providing. Then it's up to them to decide which parts of that package do we actually want to go for. Then you're also saving yourself from undercharging and taking way too much work and ended up using all your time up on this one project that you should have never potentially agreed to. So you always want to be smart about how you tailor your offer, and you do want to break down the different components. Perhaps filming is going to take you an 8-hour day. Perhaps editing is going to take you 2 8-hour days. Perhaps sound design is going to take you another day. You want to try and charge individually for these components. You're 100% going to make mistakes along the way. Not everyone you reach out to is going to respond. Sometimes it might feel like you're sending hundreds, if not thousands of outreach messages and you're not getting great responses. What you want to do is start. You want to start by making that list of people to outreach to and start by outreaching to them. Then you want to talk to other people in your space and get feedback on your pitch. Hey, I've sent this message 200 times. I've not gotten a single response. What needs to change? This is a great time to go to VidPro Plus, show them the pitch that you're sending and ask for their feedback. What could you do better? What could you change? And how could you potentially change your results? So the main thing is getting the list of people to outreach to, sending off your offer and adjusting as you go along. If you're seeing great results, then you're probably doing it right. If you're not seeing great results, you're already building that momentum. You're already starting to get out there, but you can adjust it along the way to maximize your results. There's a scenario that is super common when it comes to charging for your work, and that is grossly undercharging for what you're providing. You might not make it clear what deliverables you're exactly providing, and you may just end up agreeing to a lot more than you should have and for a low fee. So just to be completely clear, how we're going to go from unpaid to paid is one of 3 ways. One of the clients that you're working for free will eventually convert to a paying client, and then you've immediately got your first paid job. Alternatively, the clients you're working for free may recommend you, and the process of word of mouth may get going. You're building your online portfolio, you're getting your name out there, and someone may recommend your services to you. Because you're treating every free job you do like it's a paid one, and you're being super enthusiastic, and you're really doing your best to network, hopefully the process of word of mouth is going to begin, and people are going to start recommending you and your services to other people, and you may land your first paid client that way. So alongside those two more passive approaches, you're going to be actively doing outreach. You're going to use Jack's Outreach Masterclass to tailor your offer, and you're going to be firing off your 5-line pitch to your list of potential contacts. From there, you will eventually convert one of these leads into a paying client, and you've now officially become a freelancer.
So let's add my 2 cents now on how to get your first client. Raz covered a lot of the amazing theory-based stuff. Let's break down some practical, hands-on examples of ways I've been able to get clients, or ways other people in this server have been able to get clients. Now, first off, I want to, as a framework, say that you should watch and take notes and absorb the Outreach Masterclass. That's going to be pretty pivotal in outreaching to the clients and getting in front of them. Now, I'll also discuss this. Getting your first client is likely going to be through outbound leads, aka you going to them. Later in the future, when you touch enough projects and you build enough track record, you'll benefit from inbound leads, aka you've got a big network, people are recommending you, maybe you have a personal brand that's getting exposure on its own, and it's a more of a passive approach. But your first client will likely be a very active, hands-on approach to getting a client. Understand that. It's not going to fall into your lap, right? Natural progression means that a lot of the kind of free work that you might have already been exploring in the previous sections could turn into paid work. Rappers that I shot free music videos for, years later eventually had budget and wanted to pay me. Also, the same group of friends who were like a group of rappers, they ended up hosting club nights. And they hired me for some of my first paid nightclub videos, where originally I shot a free music video for them. So understand that in the how to get your first paid job, a lot of you might benefit from natural progression, where some of the free opportunities you've been exploring turn into paid work. Let's relate that to me and my team. Both of my editors, who are both on a significant salary, a $1,000 plus salary a month, they came to me and they originally did free work. Shout out to Emil and shout out to Rail. They came to me, they did free work, and they showcased their skills. And I essentially recruited them and scouted them because I saw the value in what they were already doing for free. So again, that just relates back to the natural progression in the free work section. We're in the getting your first job section, but it's all tied in, and these things kind of happen in unison. A lot of times, the relationships you're establishing in the free section could be your first paid jobs. Now, what were some of my first paid jobs? Some of my first paid jobs were exhausting my immediate network. So my older brother was a designer at some startup. He was able to raggle me a little $100 budget to edit some promo video for them. YouTubers, I was making YouTube content. I'd get literally, this is no joke, $5 a video to edit Minecraft videos for some, again, people in my immediate network. And some of the clubs, etc., were some of my first paid things. You can also explore freelance websites. Upwork was massive for me back in the day. It is certainly not optimized to land work for these days, depending on where you are in the world. If you're in, Southeast Asia, etc., the rates might be more favorable to the cost of living in your local area. If you're in the West, UK, USA, etc., it might not be. You might have to more hunt for the diamonds in the rough, so to speak, the gems, and they're certainly there, but the majority of stuff on freelance websites these days, you do have to hunt for the gem. But freelance websites is another place where you could potentially land your first job, right? What are you looking for in the early days? What do you actually want from these, right? You want to extract the maximum value from these early jobs. Now, what does that look for you? That looks like you're getting a connection. You're also getting a portfolio piece, and sometimes you might even have a high-profile client. You might be invited as a camera assistant, or you might actually just get to work in unison with someone else who's got a big project. You might be taking some work from an agency, right? You have a boy who's an agency, something like that. And touching high-profile projects, despite the pay, could actually be a leverage point in the future. I just said the word future. When I filmed Future, I didn't get paid any remarkable budget for that. If I'll be honest with you, there was a 100-pound budget for the Future video. You'd think it would be crazy, but it wasn't Future handing me that money out of its, money phone stack of $50K. It was the club paying a brokey budget for, a videographer to come in. That video, despite not being a significant paycheck, was a pivotal piece that I used to justify charging other clubs more, because I could have a big high-profile client underneath my belt, and now it seemed like, well, you know what, he must have been paid something for that. Cool, it makes sense that he's now charging us X It was 250 pounds of video for the future clubs that I went on to shoot. Tiger, ASAP Ferg, etc. These were all higher paid gigs that I used to leverage the cheap gig that I originally got. And it was really just marketing material and propaganda. So your first job plays a role in that as well. I've said it ad nauseum, but the freelance game gets greater later. Take what you can up front. And I mean that in not a way to try get you exploited or anything like that. You have to understand it like this. You offering cheap or discounted work as your first projects, you are exploiting the client as much as they're exploiting you. You're using them, they're using you as a mutually beneficial situation. You are receiving portfolio pieces and a track record that you can use to sell in the future, and they're receiving a service at potentially a discounted rate. That's 100% not something you should feel exploited for or anything like that. I promise you, the more projects you touch in the early days, the easier the game gets later. I would take any work that came to me, as well, assuming I had time for it, right? Some things I didn't, but that was rare. I could usually fit it in. And that benefited me massively down the road. I see some people try and cherry pick. No, I'm worth this, or I'm not going to work that. That's a McDonald's salary, blah, blah, blah. This is a completely self-motivated industry. Whatever you have on your plate is usually a result of your own actions. So you need to build a track record. You need to get the word out there. And oftentimes doing cheap, discounted work for your first few projects is definitely part of that process. Now, let's talk about messaging. You will be outreaching to your first clients. You will be. Your first client will likely be one of two situations. It will be either someone in your immediate network, which not all of you can benefit from, but some of you can. And if you can, explore that one, because that one's usually the best, aka my brother was a designer at a startup. He could get them to cut me $100 budget to do a little promo video for them because he knew I was a video editor. Cool. That could be an option for you. Number two, you could be outreaching, aka sending messages to businesses, sending messages to influencers, sending messages to individuals, to startups, whatever the case may be. I will repeat something that I said in the Outreach Masterclass, but for your benefit, I can't repeat 4.5 hours of content, so you should still go watch it. But regardless, I said in that, as a joke, even a shitty message sent enough times eventually converts. It's better than a perfect message sent once, right? Now, having said that, the ultimate goal for you as an outreacher, aka someone exploring outbound leads, is to get a pretty nice structure for a message. Ryaz broke down something himself, and we've also talked in the Outreach Masterclass about a couple of other formats that you could use, which again are winners and have converted for other people. A good message with consistent volume is eventually going to convert 100%. So you want to get in front of people. I won't go into the specific places because, again, that's what the Outreach Masterclass was. My club message, right? My initial message that I used to send to promoters on Facebook using the method we talked about in the Outreach Masterclass method, the Facebook method, right? That was a poor message. It was a bad message. It was not optimized. It was not anything special, right? It was literally as simple as this. Hey, what's up, guys? I saw you're having an event this weekend. Here's an after movie I recently shot for X. I'd love to come through and put something similar together for you guys. I'm sure you're aware how important an after movie is. You can use it for promo on social media afterwards. Let me know if you want me to come through. Like literally just flat out vanilla message. No pain points, no hook, nothing to reel them in. Just, hey, I've done this before. Do you guys want this service? Here's a link to what it looked like for them. So ultimately, that's it. The principles here are simple. You should be exploring warm leads to start, if you have any. Alternatively, you should go heavy into the outreach, and you should be aware that natural progression is going to happen. You aren't going to be paid $1 billion for your first gig, and over time, if you do things right, you'll establish a network, you'll establish some clientele, and you'll scale those prices up as you progress. More on that in the rest of the course, but ultimately, after this episode right here, you should have all of the foundational knowledge on getting your first freelance job. Action steps. Make a list of 50 to 100 initial leads. For me, I sat down and cold called a bunch of businesses. I sent emails to them, get an idea of what's in your local area. I would hit up clubs, etc. You can include important details. You can include specific people to contact, etc. And you can also send off messages to all of these people and have some kind of tiered system to circle back and bump the ones that maybe didn't get back to you or didn't respond. It could be a nice final hoorah. Maybe they don't respond for a second time. That's the worst case scenario. They likely will. Also, action steps. Explore your warm leads. That could be a great place to actually get your first job. And also another action step, watch the Outreach Masterclass, because that's going to give you a lot of hands-on knowledge on how to approach clients directly and take off the training wheels, so to speak, and save a lot of the early mistakes that I made, a lot of other people that came before me made, and you don't have to make if you pay attention to the educational material here in VP+.
When it comes to pricing your services, this can be a common area of confusion or just not knowing where to start at all. In this module, we're going to give you a bit of guidance as to how you can actually price your services and make sure that you're not undercutting yourself or overpricing yourself when it comes to charging for your services. When it comes to pricing your services, essentially what you want to make sure is that you're getting fairly compensated for the amount of time that you put into a project. For me, accurately pricing your services started when I started to track and record how long it was taking me to complete certain tasks and activities. I used a service called Clockify, which allows you to track how long different tasks take you and keep a log of them. But the principles are the same. You can literally just take your iPhone and set a stopwatch and make sure you're recording how long it takes you to, for example, edit a video, how many hours you're on a shoot day for, how long it takes you to do the color grading. And with experience, you'll start to get better and better at predicting how long it's going to take you to complete a project. So, my first piece of advice is when you're doing free projects, when you're doing passion projects, when you're doing any of the work that you're doing up until this point, stop to record how long it takes you to get those pieces of work done. For example, it might take me 8 hours to edit a video. It might take me 2 shoot days of 8 hours to get a video shot and completed. I'm going to start recording that, tracking it, and putting it in my job log so that I have an idea of exactly how long something took me to complete. So if someone approaches me for a similar service or project, I have a really good reference point of how long it might take me to complete that project. Now that you've got a sense of how long it might take you to complete a task or project, when a new project inquiry comes your way, what you're going to do is you're going to take that project inquiry and just on a piece of paper, on your notes app or whatever, you're going to break down exactly how long that project may take. For example, if a client reaches out to me and says, I've got 10 hours of content that I need edited into a course, I can roughly say that it will take me 2 to 3 hours to edit 1 hour of content down to 10 to 15 minutes worth of course material. Then using that estimate, I would go online and research what are the standard rates that people are charging for these services in your specific country or region. For example, a very common editing rate in London is $35 per hour. I'll take that $35 per hour model and apply it to how many hours I roughly think this project's going to take me. For example, if I think I'll be editing this content for 8 hours, I will times that by $35 an hour, and then I will have my rough estimate for how much I should be charging just as a base reference. Now, obviously, the industry standard rate for what service you're providing is not obviously going to apply to you straight away. When you're working your way up, you may need to undercut that price or charge less than that price to justify your service because A, you're inexperienced, and B, you haven't got that proven track record like we spoke about. So you may need to charge less than the industry average just to begin with, so you can gradually work your way up to charging that industry average. But you're regardless going to take that estimation of how long it's going to take you to complete this task or project, times that by a standard hourly rate that you deem is suitable to you. An important piece of advice for this is never go below the minimum wage for your area. Find out what the minimum wage is, find out what the living wage is, and try and stick with that. Don't go any less than that, because if you think about it, a super low pay and a super low skilled job, such as working at McDonald's or working in a coffee shop, they're at least going to be getting paid minimum wage. And there's no reason you can't be at least making minimum wage either. So if you're really unsure, don't ever go below minimum wage or standard living wage in your specific area. And ideally work towards establishing yourself at a rate that the industry standard is currently operating at. A super common scenario when it comes to pricing your work is taking on too much work and promising too much for too low of a rate, and then having a dreadful time when it actually comes to sitting down and getting the work done because you feel like you're not getting your value's worth. One way I would advise you to protect yourself from charging too little is to clearly lay out exactly what you're delivering to the client for the price that they're asking. For example, a way I protect myself as an editor is I offer a 3-round edit system. I will send the video to you for major feedback. I will then make those changes and send the video back to you again for any minor feedback, small changes that you may want made. I'll then send the video to you for a final time just to quality control and check that everything's how it should be. If you want additional edits above this, I will have to charge additionally, and I'll make it super clear from the outset that in this price, I'm only offering you 3 rounds of changes, and for anything above that, you will be required to pay additionally. And I'll try and make it clear what that additional fee would be, so it's clear up front. Now, this is a way I like to protect myself as an editor, because otherwise in the past when I was starting out, I've ended up editing the same project for months at a time because the client will come back to me 2-3 months later when they realized they wanted something changed and hadn't made a decision on it at the time and then expected me to make that change then and there. So I like to protect myself now by offering the 3-round revision system, so I'm not agreeing to anything more than 3 separate exports for one project. Now, obviously that's a specific video editing example, but there's a ton of ways that could apply to you. Perhaps if you're doing a shooting day, you want to agree to only shoot for 8 hours, and anything above that time, you may have to charge overtime. So think about it like that. Make it super clear what you're offering and what's included in your price, and make it super clear that what the client will have to pay additionally for if those boundaries are broken. This just protects you as a freelancer and makes sure you're not overworking yourself and over-delivering for the price that you're offering. Another super common scenario is overcharging clients and scaring them away. You may come in with a super ambitious fee and then never hear from that client again. The reason this is risky is because say you really need that work and you really need the money, you're potentially losing a client. You may have fractured the relationship with that client because you priced yourself too high. As I said, it all comes back to that base model. What's your estimate for how long this project is going to take you? What's your hourly rate that you're happy to settle for? Multiply the two together and come up with your fee from there. I always like to account for a bit of contingency. Oh, I may have an off day and I get things done super slowly, so I need to add a little bit of contingency for that. My laptop might crash a bunch of times and that may set me back. So I like to add a little additional bump up just to cover myself. And trust me, as a freelancer, people will expect this. You're not charging a typical salaried job. You do have a bit more wiggle room to cover yourself for those additional costs or additional time investments that you may incur. So just to make it super clear, I want you to record how long it takes you to complete tasks in your freelance projects, whether that be your portfolio and passion projects, your free work, and just to start getting a sense of how long it's really taking you to deliver certain services. Identify what you want to charge as your hourly rate. This should be above minimum wage and just below the industry standard if you're only just starting out. Multiply those two together to get your average daily rate or your average fee per project. As a freelancer, it can often be a difficult choice to make between charging hourly, charging daily, or charging a fixed fee. The reason I tend to steer away from charging on a time-based model is because, say for example, I complete a project quicker than expected, or I really exceed expectations and get something turned around quickly, I don't want to be penalized for that by getting paid less. So I prefer to work out a rough average and agree on a fixed fee up front so that the client is locked into paying me that fixed fee rather than changing it based on how long or how short the project takes me to complete. Some clients may come to you and ask you for your hourly rate, and if they want to pay you on a time-based model, I'm not saying that you should try and make them pay you on a project-based model. I'm just saying, as a freelancer, I prefer to go on the project-based model because I can work out a rough fee and charge them accordingly. If a project requires me to work on a time-based model, I would simply say to them, my editing rate is $35 an hour. My shooting rate is $35 an hour. Whatever the rate I've come to and I've charged other clients for, I will charge them. It's absolutely fine to charge an hourly rate, but just don't box yourself in to getting underpaid because you are excelling at your job or you're performing tasks quickly and efficiently. The key components when it comes to charging properly for your projects are getting good at estimating how long it takes you to complete a task or a given service, charging based on an approximation of how long a project is going to take you multiplied by your hourly rate. Over time, you want to be gradually increasing your rates, even if it's just by $10, $20, $30 an hour each time, because if you think about it, you're making an incremental gain in how much you're charging over a period of time. We've all been in situations where we charged too little or charged too much for a project and potentially lost a client or ended up working way more than we should have. And we're just trying to give you a framework to help avoid coming into those situations from our own personal experience.
So, just to rally off some final guidelines on pricing, there are two core ways to price. You have an hourly rate or a fixed fee. A lot of you guys will be going for your fixed fee. Hourly rate more applies to in-person work or impromptu work, etc. Maybe even you're finishing up a couple final things, etc. But clients, for the most part, in my experience, they want a flat fee. They don't want to have some open-ended project that could be any amount of hours getting billed, so they usually are inquiring on a flat fee. How you determine your flat fee is actually based on your hourly rate. The formula to calculate a flat fee is the following. I'm going to calculate the amount of hours the project's going to take, and then I'm going to times that by the money I want to be paid per hour. So for example, with my club videos back in the day, I would charge my clubs £250. That's the price that I got it up to, and that was for ultimately a 10-hour work shift, so to speak. There would be around 4 or 5 hours coming to the club and filming and around 5-6 hours of actual editing. I rounded that off to 10 hours. I want to get paid £25 an hour, about $35 an hour. So I would quote the client, the club in this case, £250 because that was my hourly rate times by the amount of time I was going to spend on site in the club filming, and then the amount of time I was going to spend editing that content as well. Also, I want to emphasize to track your hours. We've all been there in the early days where we spent 4 days on a project that we got paid $75 for example. Now, if you actually, did the math on those hours, you're probably working for less than minimum wage. So that is something that you are aware of when you're actually tracking your hours, when you have a specific hourly rate that you're working for, whether it be a hourly rate you're charging the client or whether you simply use the hourly rate as the metric to define what your fixed rate is to the client. So understand that The freelance game, I'm going to say it again, gets greater later. You're going to be starting at a certain price, and you'll likely progress to a much higher price than that. So don't let that put you off getting key work underneath your belt in the early days that might be more beneficial to you than just the monetary value. Oftentimes, those early stage projects have different value attached to them, not just money, aka a piece for your portfolio, a track record, a connection, and low-paying jobs are still useful if they're giving you back. I want to emphasize the point of mutual value exchange. That's what you're looking for. You're not looking to go out here and, give someone a sweetheart deal just to benefit them. It's benefiting you as well. And the way you're going to, gain from that is you're going to gain a portfolio piece. It's going to grow your network. It's going to give you more experience. And listen, it might even translate to something bigger in the future. And ultimately, it just builds your track record. So to conclude pricing, your prices are flexible. They are going to increase as you go. Please be tracking the hours of these early projects so you're aware of what your current hourly rate is. Maybe it's not where you want it. An idea of how you can get it there is define the amount you want to be paid per hour. And when a client asks you for a quote, you give them a flat fee based on how many hours you think it's going to take you. You times your hourly rate by the amount of hours it's going to take you. And that's your flat fee that you present to the client.
In this module, we're going to be talking about how you can actually build a more long-term and sustainable income from freelancing. The basic principle for establishing a long-term, more sustainable income from freelancing is moving away from the odd job model where you're doing little one-offs for people here and there and you're just charging a little small fee here and there, and actually moving towards repeat work where you're working with the same client multiple times on multiple different projects and guaranteeing yourself a base salary. Just to give you a bit of my own personal experience, when I first started out freelancing, I was pretty stressed and pretty overwhelmed. I had 3 to 6 different clients at any given time. I was managing completely different projects for all of those different clients. I was having to set up new projects, build new assets every single time. And I would be working really hard for 6 to 8 hours and realize I'd forgotten to reply to these 5 emails about these other few jobs that I haven't sent deliverables for yet. And I was just finding myself really overwhelmed. Fast forward to today, and now I'm working with a few clients on a consistent basis, and that's providing me a base salary, which I have on a month-to-month basis to look forward to. And it takes a lot of that stress of being across 3 to 6 different projects at any given time and having to manage all the different aspects of those projects. Instead, I'm working regularly with people I've built a really good communication and relationship with, and they know exactly what to expect from me in terms of my services. So in terms of the projects I was doing, what did that actually look like? Well, initially I was running and gunning, doing music videos, doing fashion promo, editing courses, doing all these different types of jobs. Now I've moved to a model where I regularly work for clients that use me on a repeat basis. For example, one of my clients will book me for 2 to 3 weeks at a time, if not months at a time, to come and be an edit assistant for their Channel 4 content, which is a broadcast channel in the UK, and deliver content for their social media pages. This has taken a lot of the weight off my chest. I've been able to regularly charge them a fee for providing these services, and they've booked me for long periods of time, which has saved me having to spend as much time on outreach and looking for new clients and having to take all these odd jobs and managing all these different projects at one time. Now, instead, I'm regularly working with 2 to 3 people, and then if I want to supplement my income, I do some outreach. I go out there and I look for those odd jobs so I can get a little boosted income to add to that additional base salary I'm making from my repeat clients. Now, the key here is looking for industries or looking for spaces where there is that repeat need for your work. For example, the company I currently work for is always delivering content to Channel 4 on a regular basis. So they're always a slate of productions that they're working on, and all of those projects need to be edited and need to have an edit assistant on board for those projects. So at any given time, in any given year, there's a certain amount of projects they'll definitely have for me to work on that they're going to book me for. Now, this is on the basis that I deliver on what I promise, and I'm an easy person to work with, an easy person to get along with, and I really do provide the value that they need. As long as I do that, they will keep coming back to me for that repeat work, and I will have them as a consistent client. So if you're in a position where you're taking these odd jobs, how do you kind of move towards that model? Like I just mentioned there, you want to look for industries where there is that repeat need for work. Say, for example, you're working with a YouTuber and they upload a video a week. That's a video every week that needs to be edited that you can potentially get repeat work from. If you can land that client, you're potentially going to have 4 videos a month that you can work on every single month and charge a fixed fee for those. And then you're going to start building that base guaranteed salary for you on a month-to-month basis. And how you're going to do that is you're going to potentially look at converting some of the clients you have to repeat clients if they have a need for consistent deliverables or consistent editing or consistent filming. If they run a YouTube channel, if they run a business, they might have a constant need for content and creation. If you can't convert your clients to that repeat retainer model, you're going to have to start looking for people who may have room for that kind of more long-term sustainable model where you can consistently work on a number of videos a month or a number of projects a month, and then you're going to start building that guaranteed income for yourself. The way you want to break down your monthly salary is, I charge this much per project and I need this many projects at that rate to make a base salary. For example, if you charge $200 per video and you do 10 videos in a month, which is achievable when there's 30 days in a month, you are going to get a base salary of $2,000 a month. So you need to look at it like this. Whatever you're currently charging, figure out how many projects you need to do at that rate in order to get a salary. And then also start to think about, like what we spoke about in the last module, if you up that rate, you potentially need to do fewer of those projects per month, but you'd still be able to land that base salary. Think about the clients you're currently working with. Is there any room to come to a long-term agreement? Do they have a consistent need for projects where you can book yourself in advance in order to work on their projects on a consistent basis? If not, start identifying people you can reach out to that may have a need for that consistent repeat work and try and pitch your services to them. You can always frame things in a specialized way for them, that you're going to offer them some kind of discount because of the repeat work, that you're going to give this additional package to them because they're booking you on a repeat basis. Once you land 2 to 3 people on a retainer or for repeat work, you're already building a guaranteed income on a month-to-month basis. And then you can start to supplement that with the odd jobs that you do have the spare time to take. And it's kind of up to you how you land and how you find those odd jobs to supplement that. You may lose a client here or there, and that base salary may take a dip. And it's okay. That's all part of the freelance game. You may lose a couple clients in a month and you may not have that same base salary guarantee. But what are you going to do about it? You're not going to sit at home and you're not going to feel sorry for yourself. You're going to take the work you did for those repeat clients, use that as a demonstration of the value you can provide and the services you can provide, and land new clients with that. And before you know it, you will land new clients and you will be back at that base salary, and you may even be able to negotiate a higher rate based on what you previously did. Also, personal anecdote for me, I was initially charging quite a modest day rate for one of the clients I work with now. I proved myself to them working for them for 6 months to a year, consistently on a month-to-month basis. After that period, due to the current state of the economy, I was able to break down exactly what value I'd been providing to them for that period of time and ask them for a raise in my rate. I was very polite and I was very formal in how I did this, and they actually were very happy to agree to that raise in rate. They said to me, Riaz, we've seen the value in what you provide. We know you work hard. We know you're efficient, so we're happy to approve that. The most important thing is landing that repeat work. The rate may not be amazing to begin with, but you then have that guaranteed income coming in every month, and you can start to negotiate a high rate with that client 6 months, a year down the line when you've proven yourself. And it would actually be harder for that client to go out and find someone else who may not be as good at the job as you are. So if you can prove yourself to a client, you can gradually negotiate a higher rate with them and start to increase your monthly salary. Also, like we've touched on a bunch of times, your salary is going to increase gradually. As your skills get better, as you get more efficient, as you become a more proactive freelancer, you're going to get more clients coming your way. You're going to be able to pick and choose the higher paid jobs, and you're also going to have more consistent retainer clients that are going to build out that long-term income. So like we said, focusing on all the skills we've been talking about so far is going to allow you to build a long-term sustainable income. Something that is also really key to think about when it comes to building a long-term sustainable career in freelancing is the money you're making is not just your money to spend and blow on stupid things like clothes, jewelry, whatever it might be. What you want to do is put a percentage of that income every time a check comes in. You want to put a percentage of that income away. I like to put roughly 20 to 30% of that income away, and that's purely because if I get hit with a tax bill, if I damage my equipment, if I need to buy a new computer, whatever it might be, I've got a nice safety net of funds set aside that I'm not going to be in a dire situation if I do happen to lose a client or if I do happen to have a particularly difficult freelance month. Don't see all the money you make as money to spend. Be smart about it and work out how much can I realistically live on. How much do you need for your rent? How much do you need for your expenses? And then outside of that, put a percentage of that money aside purely for the fact of covering things like taxes, expenses, bills, things like that, so that you're not going to be in a dire situation if you do happen to lose a client or you do happen to have a month of quiet freelance. So when it comes to building a sustainable long-term plan with freelancing, you want to move away from taking those odd jobs. Of course, when you start, you're going to need to take as much work as you can get your hands on, and it may feel varied and inconsistent at the type of works you're doing. Once you build up that portfolio and you get a consistent style down for your work, you want to look towards landing clients who are going to hire you on a monthly basis to complete a certain amount of work or deliverables. For example, one client may want you to do 4 videos a month for the next 6 months. Those are the type of deals you want to land to get yourself that consistent salary and move away from being in that place that I was, which was super overwhelmed and super anxious about how I was going to manage all these different projects with all these different clients, and instead thinking about, I'm working with a handful of clients who I consistently deliver high quality services to on a month-to-month basis.
A little bit on creating a long-term sustainable income. I am going to talk about this because I built a formula for this when I was coming up. Now, freelancing is an inconsistent industry, and I've talked about this a lot, and you'll be aware of that, right? You are responsible for the deal flow. No one's, putting the deals on the table for you. Maybe you have an agency. Cool. That's a little bit more of a stress-free situation because you're not hustling for each specific project and you're working with an agency. We'll talk about that. I have two specific examples. A good friend of mine who freelancing was just a bit too intense, and he went and rallied up and joined an agency, and he was still on a freelance basis, but he was getting more of a consistent flow of deals, and he didn't have to hustle for them in particular. So that's something you need to be aware of. Freelancing is a stressful industry because you have to hustle for each individual project, which means when there's loads of work, it's amazing, but when there's not loads of work, it could be highly stressful. Ideally, you want to get away from working strictly commission-based projects. So for me, what that looked like was I found any consistent work I could. I teamed up with YouTubers. They were phenomenal long-term recurring clients because they needed a consistent video product, a YouTube video, but on a long-term basis. 4 videos a week, 3 videos a week, 2 videos a month. So I didn't necessarily close them on a guaranteed retainer, but there was a specific amount of deliverables which were going on into the future. It was 4 videos a week for 2 different YouTube clients, and that made up my base income. They were both paying me on average about $1,000 each, even if I got no other work. And I talked about this in the Outreach Masterclass. Even if I got 0 other clients that month, I still made $2,000 a month, and my bills got paid, my base was secure. Then I would go to work and I would do project hopping, one-off jobs at film clubs on the weekend, rappers in the week, promo videos for businesses, also random commission work on Upwork, random commission work over the internet. People would come to me through my personal brand, my YouTube channel. But regardless, imagine I didn't have the consistent clients and I was simply hustling all these one-off jobs. My income would be all over the place. X amount of dollars one month, X amount of dollars the other month. However, the strategy that I built up where I essentially had a multi-tiered system, my long-term recurring YouTube clients, my safety net, my base income was guaranteed. I could never make less than $2,000 a month. Now, we usually didn't make $2,000 a month. We usually made a lot more, $3,000, $4,000, $5,000 a month because of the additional projects that we were doing. But there were certainly months where they weren't there, which was fine because I still had my long-term recurring YouTube clients. My bills got paid, everything was fine. Next month, we'd land some more one-off jobs and we'd get back to the higher numbers. Real quick, before I jump into another model, which can be fantastic for long-term sustainable work, the agency model. Some of you guys are involved in agencies yourself working for them. Some of you might even run an agency and want to employ some people. So there's a wonderful symbiotic relationship here in VP Plus where some of you can look for work with the other person's agency. Some of you are hiring people for your agency. Amazing. But the ideal setup you want to establish a income you can rely on is you want to build up a income you can do the math on. AKA, I can't predict, realistically at least, how many jobs I'm going to get into the future. I don't know how many clubs are going to come to me. I don't know how many rappers are going to come to me. So at best, I could only guesstimate what my future holds. However, my long-term recurring YouTube clients, I could genuinely do the math on. I know they're giving me 4 or 5 videos a week. It's X amount of dollars per video. That contributes to a monthly salary. So your core should be made up of clients you could do the math on, and you build a base salary out of that. Clients which are long-term recurring, retainer clients. Even if they're not retainer clients, they're giving you a set amount of deliverables a month. These days, I land people to package deals. So we just closed a client for my agency at $5,000 a month. For that, we're doing 30 short form and 4 long form. We're also doing the scripts for it as well. But that's a favorable deal for us because every month they're going to send us one check of $5,000. And that's something, again, we could do the math on. Cool. Once we get 2-3 clients like that, we've got a decent business right there. And it's something we could do the math on. So that's the ultimate formula for you as a freelancer. Get clients as your base you could do the math on. Increase your salary with the one-off jobs and the project hopping. Now, briefly, let's talk about creating consistency from the perspective of teaming up with an organization. If you've listened to my story even a little bit, you probably heard the name Noah. Me and Noah were coming up as freelancers together, and we were in the same lane. We were shooting clubs together, shooting music videos together regardless. As we got older and we both moved to London, Noah didn't like the, struggle of grinding every single project, and it just wasn't the most favorable to his personality traits. I'm a more hustler, go-getter, come out here and just send 100 messages and probably convert something. Noah wanted a little bit more consistency and less of a, aggressive approach, less of a active approach that he'd have to take. So he joined up with a big production company in London called Gaffer, Gaffer, I think. They've shot some massive projects, some super high profile things. He was still working with them on a freelance basis. They were paying him a hourly rate or a day rate. I'm not too sure what his specific setup was, but he wasn't a on the books employee. He was still a freelancer. However, he wasn't hustling for the deal flow. That was a mutually beneficial relationship. They needed someone to come in and edit the projects for their agency. He needed some consistent work that he didn't have to go out there and get himself. He could team up with the agency, and he'd simply come into the agency. They'd pay his day rate or however he was being compensated for that work, and he would turn up and just get the work done on site. Agency model is certainly fantastic. You could team up with a production company in real life, or you could actually team up with an agency on the internet. The only downside to that is you're never going to get the full piece of the pie because they're taking a commission. But on the other hand, that might be a completely fair trade-off to receive in return consistent work with no stress on your back. So a little bit of ideas on creating a consistent long-term recurring income. Ideally, you guys want to make up your base salary off of retainer clients, package deals like my agency, or at the very least, a client who you know is a long-term recurring client, aka they're going to give you multiple videos a month, multiple videos a week, whatever the case may be. And then you increase your income with the project hopping, the one-off gigs, the stuff that you wouldn't really want your base to be made out of because it's a little bit more anxiety-driven, but it's fantastic to use as a vehicle to increase your income and do that commission work and get your numbers up a little bit higher. But regardless, your base should be solidified with your long-term recurring clients, your retainers, or your package deals.
In this module, we're going to talk a bit about how you can start to build a reliable and consistent client base. Now, when I first started, there was no consistent rhyme or reason to the type of projects I was doing. They were a bit all over the place, and I didn't really kind of have a consistent theme of the type of work I was doing. Now, even though it was very varied and there was no consistency when it first started, some areas I started to notice I was getting consistent work in were things like editing courses for online coaches and influencers, editing music content such as music videos, concert films, and promotional content for musicians' Instagram pages, as well as creating promo content for different fashion brands that they could post on their social media. Now, these were three very separate, different areas. However, over time, I've been able to build a niche by focusing on those three different things and finding consistent clients in those different areas. For example, when I first started, I was editing courses for people for their websites. Because I had edited one or two courses for fairly well-known people in the industries, one of them was in the dating space, one of them was in the music production space, one of them was a YouTube teacher who actually taught woodworking on YouTube, even though it sounds super random, he was building courses teaching woodworking. So as I had done those type of projects, I was able to pitch myself to other people that needed courses editing for their platforms and just demonstrate to them, I've edited this many courses for these high-profile clients in their respective spaces, and they were able to sell those courses effectively because they were well-edited and well-produced by me because I had taken that content and put it together in an engaging way which their audience and platform were happy with. With the music side of things, initially, I was just saying yes to any musician in the local area that wanted a music video. There was not necessarily any rhyme or reason to why I was doing it other than the fact I was interested in music and I enjoyed music. Now, later down the line, I was able to demonstrate proof that I had an interest in music and I'd built up a wealth of music content, so I could therefore be trusted by more well-known musicians to shoot their concert films, shoot promotional videos for them, as I had a backlog of all these projects I'd done. Now, at the time, there were lesser-known artists I was working with, but it didn't mean I wasn't able to take that step up gradually and start working with more well-known artists and start to go on their tours and document their tours and create concert films for them. So the groundwork I put in when it was just shooting music videos for those local artists eventually paid off in getting me bookings for shooting tours and concerts for more well-established musicians. In the fashion space, because I started shooting behind-the-scenes content for fashion editorials, a lot of the time the photographers would reach out to me and say, hey, look, we want to do a video for this project, and I don't know anyone who does video. I know you've done those behind-the-scenes videos. How would you like to step up and actually shoot a fashion film for the project that we can run alongside the photography? So I was able to make friends with photographers and actually come on board as the primary videographer because they only had skills in photography and they didn't have anyone who they knew who could do the video other than me. So even though it initially felt very varied and there was no real connection between the different areas I was involved in, editing courses, creating promotional video for musicians and fashion brands, later down the line, I've been able to consistently land clients in all of those areas because I've proven it and I've got a track record of doing that now. And if I'm ever to do outreach, I take that work I've already done and I show it to those clients and I pitch myself by saying, I can provide you this exact service, but this exact price, and I've done this for this many clients already, and I've spent this many hours doing it. So the way you need to approach it is when you're just getting started, you're just experimenting and you're building up those reps working with different clients. Once you've done that for a while, you can start to look at the common themes. Okay, I'm really good at editing courses for online coaches. Maybe I can start to outreach to people who create online courses and offer them my services as an online course editor. Okay, I'm great at shooting music videos and music promotional content. Perhaps I can pitch myself to management companies or music agencies as someone who can provide promotional content for these artists to help sell tickets to their shows or sell merchandise. As you do these odd jobs, and even though it may feel like there's no common theme when you first start, you want to start to drill down on these specific niches that you're building up reps and building experience in, so that you can then focus on offering those exact services to people who need a comparable or similar service. Another very useful thing to do in this area is to find those people who are working consistently with the type of clients you want to work with. If there's someone out there constantly creating amazing content with musicians and you really aspire to be like them, reach out to them, ask for their advice on how they started consistently landing clients. Do they work with an agency? Did they land a specific deal with a management company? How do people start to get these deals going? For me personally, as I'd got some experience working on this type of content, I was able to package that and show exactly what skills and services I could provide to music management companies who would then hire me to go on these tours with these artists. Once I'd had my first shot and done my absolute best on that first opportunity, I could prove it again in the future. And then when my photos were used on websites like NME, the Daily Mail, the Telegraph, I was able to prove that my photos had actually brought value to that artist because they've been published on global media. So it's all about building your track record. When you first start, there's not necessarily going to be a rhyme or reason to the work you do. But when you look back, you might start identifying common themes or strengths that you have and start being able to package that. Now, as you package that and you land more jobs and you land more clients, you're going to start proving to people that you really can deliver on this. And each time your credit and your reputation is going to be building and building and building. And you're going to find it easier and easier to land clients in this space. You also need to be mindful of what it is you're trying to get out of freelancing. For example, for me, one really key factor is making a decent income. So I was able to land the university I went to as a consistent client because I was proactive and reached out to their departments and asked if they needed videos. To this day, the university still comes to me for videos because I've worked on a number of different videos for them. All of those projects I've been able to charge pretty much over $1,000 for each video that I've delivered, and the client is super easy to work with. They don't expect a lot from me when it comes to delivering the video. I always exceed their expectations. They always pay me on time, and they're super easy to deal with. On the other hand, some of the music experiences I've had have been super difficult and super challenging. But I personally love working on music content and I love working with musicians. So I'm not counting on music content to necessarily pay all the bills, but I am counting on it to have a fun time, to be working on some projects that I'm passionate about, and to be building up my connections in the music industry. So the way you need to look at it is, what are the different reasons that you're building these different client bases? I would advise you focus in on one specific niche to develop your income, where you can see that there are clients that can pay you and can afford to pay for your services. Once you focus in on that specific niche and get 2 or 3 recurring clients, you then have the leeway to take projects because you're purely interested in them, or because you really want to just get involved in that certain industry, whether it be music or fashion in my case. So when you first start out, see each project as a chance to figure out if this is something for you, if this is something you want to investigate further. When you've got a few projects under your belt, try and drill down on a specific niche that you can focus on. And what is your reason for focusing on that niche? If one of your key aims is to build a sustainable income, working with corporate clients or clients that have access to resources to pay you is a niche that you want to drill down on. In my case, that happened to be corporate videos for the University of Westminster, the same university that I went to, as it was a super easy arrangement for me to set up, and I was able to consistently work with them and get paid well from it. At the same time, I've been able to focus on music and fashion because they were paying my bills, and I've now been able to increase my rates in both the music and fashion spaces by consistently building a track record. And now, when I combine those 3 threads together, it does give me an all-round solid base for freelancing, and I'm building my portfolio in these 3 areas. So, in essence, building a consistent client base is choosing a niche to focus on and building up a track record within that niche, then finding potential clients within that niche or specialist area to pitch your service to.
So building and maintaining a client base, let's rally through the list. There's one thing I want all of you to be aware of when you're starting out. Your clients will be random at the start. There's no rhyme or reason to it. When I was starting out, I'd be filming a music video one day. Maybe I'd be able to string together some gym fitness influencer content work. Then I'd be in a car dealership, filming a car dealership. Then I'd be in a club all the time. While this was happening, I'm doing remote video editing work on the internet. There's a real, pretty wild spectrum to the jobs you're going to be doing at the start. That's pretty much everybody, by the way. Over time, you can fit into a niche. For me, this was YouTube video editing work, as we've discussed. I was in that niche. And the more of a track record you build in a niche, the easier of a sell it is to the next person in that niche, because you seem like the undeniable hire for that niche because you actually have the skills and you built up a track record in that niche. I also did nightclub videos. I was filming nightclubs. I was in, dusty little back alley venues, and we made it up to some pretty high-profile, prestigious venues as well. Being in a niche is fantastic because when I worked with one promoter, they have another friend who's a promoter. They can easily recommend you. So building in a niche is very favorable to you. But again, don't be worried about that at the start because there's going to be no niche at the start. A niche is something that will naturally progress over time as you see where you fit in. And also, this might look like specializing for you. We've got some killers in VP Plus who decided, you know what? I'm more of an animator, and they've gone long and narrow into motion graphics, and they're absolutely crushing motion graphics. We've got other editors in here who say, you know what? The niche for me is short form content. I'm going to make the nicest pieces of short form content. I'm going to land influencers as my clients, and I'm going to grind that specific niche as well. I've also got friends who don't want to edit, and over time, they were doing full production. They were doing video editing and filming, and they said, you know what? I want to just do filming, and they ended up getting a favorable deal with a production company, or it could be just on a freelance basis as well, and they're just charging a day rate to come out and do camera operator work. £400 a day, that's the rate that some of my friends were getting, and all of a sudden, you turn up, you get paid your base rate, and that's another form of specializing. They still did the nitty-gritty work up front, though. They still put the grind in. They still actually touched a bunch of projects, and they did the, random stage, if you will, which is naturally the start. It was a start for me, it's a start for Rise, it's a start for absolutely everybody. You take what you can get. I've said it before, but beggars can't be choosers, and it is more beneficial to you to touch a bunch of projects in the early days, regardless of pay, regardless of these other factors, because it's ultimately experience and it's ultimately pieces for your portfolio that you can use to sell in the future. Another key for my career, establishing relationships. Now, networking is a word that you don't even know what it means anymore. You've heard it so many times. All networking is relationships. A fantastic form of networking for me when I came to London was establishing a relationship with a graphic designer who worked in the nightlife industry. We were the same industry, but we weren't in competition, which means we could have a mutually beneficial relationship. If any clients came to me and they needed graphic design work, I would outsource that to him. And he was in a position where if any promoters were in need of a videographer for their event or their club or whatever the case may be, he would push that work over to me. A graphic designer video editor relationship can be highly beneficial for the both of you. Another interesting relationship that I've seen work out is the relationship between a photographer and a videographer. That can work out fantastic. One of them's booked to do photographs. They get you along to do the videography, and vice versa. Can be a fantastic setup. Relationships are a key to any business you're building in. Relationships have also impacted me in a positive way simply through delivering a fantastic service to a client and establishing a good connection with them, and then you set yourself up for repeat business and recommendations, and all of that stuff comes, again, as a result of the network. The network, the track record, which again is a result of the portfolio and the early stage things that we've been talking about throughout this course. Also, I want to touch on basic level professionalism. Basic level professionalism is as simple as turning the work in time, listening carefully to client feedback, and just being a little bit more detail oriented. I lost a client famously back in the day. This was a good client for me. I worked with him for 13 months in a row consistently. Checks every single month. This was a long-term recurring client. We ultimately ended up ending our relationship. If I'm going to be completely frank with you, he fired me. And the absolute reason for that, it was in my early days. I would think I was 19 at the time. But the reason was completely understandable. And it was I was missing out on some details. There was a credit for the writer of the script of the video, and I messed up the name in the end credits. Now, it happened once, it happened twice. I can't remember his name. Maybe it was hard to spell. Maybe I just wasn't thinking about it. I forget the exact details. But ultimately, there was only so many times I could make that same mistake before ultimately I was a liability and I needed to be removed from the team. Now, I don't hold any malice in my heart to that client. Makes complete sense why I was taken off of that job, because basic professionalism does apply. Basic professionalism is the absolute bare minimum, but you should employ advanced professionalism, aka beat client deadlines, go above and beyond, and ultimately wine and dine the client, give them the best possible experience ever. The more of a frictionless service you can provide to your clients, the more you're going to get invited back. Think about it from this perspective. If I invited someone to film my job and they kept coming out to me, asking me questions, I told them how to edit it, they send in the project, it's completely different than what I originally told them in the brief, that's not going to be someone who you want to invite back. There was too much micromanaging of that person. It's just a nightmare. Versus the individual who you give them the brief, they turn in everything on time, they overexceed your expectations, and there was really no client feedback there. The more frictionless the job is, definitely sets you up for repeat business. There's been clients who I've had to go back on pages of revisions that never came back to me. There's been clients who I just went above and beyond and turned in a fantastic piece of work that came back to me every single time. So basic level professionalism is, again, the bare minimum. Ideally, you should be here to exceed the client's expectations, go above and beyond, and you can, set yourself up in a favorable way for that by, giving them a little bit of a longer deadline. Hey, it's going to take 5 days. It's going to take 3, but telling them 5, make sure you can get it in on the 3rd day, and all of a sudden you've beaten the deadline. So a little bit of strategy from your perspective is definitely going to go a long way. But ultimately, establishing relationships, basic professionalism, and taking any job you can really get in the first stages and then naturally fitting into a niche as you go are some core principles that will probably apply to all of you. Problems and obstacles you may face. Let's go ahead and touch on getting paid on time. Now, getting paid on time for an individual is different than a company. Individuals, it's more of a straightforward process. You deliver the content, cool, they pay you. Companies, there will likely be a bit of a wait time. The bigger the client, the longer you're usually going to wait. Now, it won't be months or whatever the case may be, but a standard 30-day wait time for an invoice to be paid when they pay payroll is pretty standard, so you should definitely expect that. Now, how do you deal with late payments? First off, this isn't a drug deal. You're not, strong-arming them into getting your money. You're a professional who's delivered a service, and, if they're a little bit late on the payment, you are giving them a friendly nudge to pay that invoice. Definitely, you don't want to turn a relationship into a hostile situation, and I've seen people mess that up. I've also seen people do that well. Let's talk about contracts. Because of the nature of the majority of jobs you'll be doing up front, these won't be multi-million-dollar budgets, which means a contract is essentially a pointless thing because, they don't pay you your $200. What are you going to do? Take them to court? Of course not, right? It costs $200 for, just a consultation with a lawyer to find out about suing them to even get your payment, right? So a contract really only matters once you start progressing into the higher ticket sales, so to speak. For example, we've just closed a $5,000 a month agency client. Yes, we had them sign a contract. Now, even that, right? What if they don't pay the contract? They're in Canada. Am I going to go get a Canadian lawyer to sue them? Probably not. So it's more just for defining the actual deliverables so everybody's signed off on what the deal is. And if anything goes maybe wrong down the road or they try and ask for more than we agreed upon, we can refer back to that contract and that specific outline of the deliverables. And there's no confusion. Everybody's on the same page about what we signed up for and what they're going to be receiving themselves. Over-demanding clients happen. Oftentimes, a client that's over-demanding fits into a category of a lower-tier client. People have heard it in nauseam. A $100 client asks for 100 changes. A $1,000 client just says, awesome, great, invoice paid, right? We've all seen a meme or a version of that, right? That's absolutely true. The clients that I've worked with, which are higher profile, oftentimes are less micromanaging. Now, that's not a baseline statement that applies to all, but certainly, in my experience, you'll deal with some trickier clients on your come up. As you mature into a professional, the clients change, they become more professional as well, and you'll have a more seamless client relationship. But being upfront and honest with the client is good, setting expectations, all of the kind of basic level stuff, and of course, agreeing all of the deliverables up front. The worst situation you could be in is to start a project when no price has actually been agreed. That's a very unfavorable situation. Again, goes back to communication, basic level professionalism, and some of the things we've kind of already talked about. However, some clients will naturally be unresponsive. They will naturally, be trickier than others. I don't have many stories, but I do have a couple. Occasionally, you might even get a sense that they might not be the most honest and reputable client, in which case employing a watermark strategy is something I've personally done, and some of you guys will have to do as well. Very rare. I want to emphasize this, that most clients you work with will actually be a breeze. I don't have that many nightmare client stories, but I have a couple. And the things I did to protect myself is if I felt a client relationship was deteriorating, I would put a watermark on the work before I sent it to them. This isn't, a fuck you or anything like that. It's a simple logo that's at a 10 opacity in the corner. The client can still watch the video in full, see the finished result, but they do have to pay you to receive the unwatermarked version that they can then use and publish to social media, to their website, wherever the case may be, whatever the client specifically is. So don't get worried. Most clients, 99.99%, are going to be nice. They're going to be enjoyable. But a couple ideas of how to handle tricky ones we've laid out here. Problems and obstacles naturally come up. You're self-employed, building a business all yourself. There will naturally be problems and obstacles that come up, but it won't be that often. It won't be that big of a deal. And ultimately, the vast majority of relationships you'll deal with in the freelancing space should be above board and enjoyable, to say the least. Well, there we go. We made it to the end of the course. Congratulations. If you've completed the modules, you didn't skip any, you've now learned a full comprehensive overview of what is freelancing, assessing your skills, what you need to freelance, building your portfolio. We've established if you should work for free. We've established some tricky things that might happen with clients. Maybe you have to get your foot in the door. Maybe you have some warm leads you can explore. We've talked about the early stages, and we've also talked about ultimately how you can transition into a full-time freelancer and build a consistent income that you can actually rely on. What are the next steps? I encourage you to tap into the community. Me or Reyes would happily answer any question you have right now. If you want to come to the chat, you say, yo, you missed something in section 3, go ahead and tag us and we'll be hitting you back with whatever response to the questions you might have. Alternatively, there's an amazing community here. I couldn't stress this enough that the programs are secondary to the actual people in this community. Talk with them, network with them. Some of them might even have more points and more advice for you, tailor-fitted to your specific situation. I want to definitely emphasize that. Please, guys, weaponize the community that's here. And seeing as this project is all about landing your clients, when you guys do land a client, tell us about it in the Wins channel. I can't wait to see. The people in here can't wait to see. And you'd be amazed at how much positive reinforcement and encouragement you'll receive when you tell us about your wins. Also, a little bit of motivation for what's to come. Maybe if you haven't had a job yet, go ahead and scroll through our Wins channel and just see what the other members are converting, what's working for them, points that might relate to you. Ultimately, the next steps are to explore the community. Some next programs for you are the Outreach Masterclass and Full-Time Freelancer, the other freelance-based courses that are available right here in the Freelance channel. And ultimately, you just completed the VP Plus Freelance Video Production Crash Course.